I started Granicus.
Good evening.
How come I'm not there? Hmm. Hi, Mark.
How are you?
Just fine. Can't see participants. It is. It's interesting.
Say, John? Oh, guess he's not there. Diane,
It
is
uh-huh.
Matt Gillingham still running his crisis, his crisis command post?
I believe so, Mark.
Okay. Just wanted to check.
It, yes, because I believe at the last board meeting they gave an update of all the various committees that are in place right now.
Okay.
Okay, we're good to go.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the July 13, 2020 Lake Washington School Board meeting. Let the record reflect that all board members are present and participating remotely. All meeting participants will also be joining this meeting remotely in alignment with the current proclamation issued by Governor Inslee. The board meeting will be live streamed and viewable on the district website. A link to view it is under the board video page on the board section of the website. If you are unable to live stream the meeting, viewers can call at 936-2809, conference ID 471683 to listen to the meeting. Regular board meetings will continue to be live streamed on the Lake Washington School District website and posted for viewing within 2 days. The first item on our agenda tonight is to administer the oath of office to Dr. John Holman, our new superintendent. Dr. Holman, will you please raise your right hand and repeat after me? I, John Holman, do solemnly swear.
I, John Holman, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully and impartially perform the duties of superintendent.
That I will faithfully and impartially perform the duties of superintendent
of Lake Washington School District number 414.
Of Lake Washington School District number 414.
As prescribed by law and to the best of my ability.
As prescribed by law and to the best of my ability.
And that I will support and maintain the.
And that I will support and maintain the.
Sorry for a bit of an awkward line break there. Constitution of the State of Washington and the United States.
The Constitution of the State of Washington and the United States.
Excellent. Congratulations, Dr. Holman.
Thank you.
Very happy to have you in this role.
Congratulations, you've been enlisted in the Army.
All right, I will now entertain a motion to approve the July 13 agenda.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved by Director Bleasner and seconded by Director Stewart that we approve the agenda. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
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 Aye. Hearing none in opposition, the motion is approved unanimously. The next item on our agenda for tonight is public comment, and due to the coronavirus, all board meetings are being held remotely, and as a result, there is no in-person public comment to ensure social distancing. All public comment should be submitted in writing to Diane Jenkins at djenkins@lwsd.org by 3 p.m. on the date of the board meeting. For the meeting tonight, we've received many comments. I've printed them out. There are 22 pages of comment that we received tonight. We received comment on 3 topics primarily: return to school in the fall, inclusion and equity, and the Juanita High School mascot. At this time, the board members and I will read a selection of the public comments that we received in advance of this meeting. And all of those public comments that have been received will be posted to the district website for this meeting. And finally, to provide an opportunity for board members to read through the public comments, all were distributed to the board on Friday, July 10th, and updated copies were presented to the board at 3 p.m. tonight. And whether or not we are able to read your public comment aloud tonight, I want to assure all those that took the time to submit public comments that each board member has their comment and will take the time to read it. So I will start by reading the first, and then we will go to Director Bleasner, and then Director Sage, and then Director Stewart and Director Carlson. The first topic of comments that we received, public comment on our return to school in the fall, and the first comment I'll read is from Benjamin Hart. Mr. Hart wrote, "I read the return to school update email the district sent out to parents on June 26th. I am happy to see that schools will reopen in the fall. There's no good substitute for in-class instruction. However, my wife and I are deeply concerned with the logistics of the hybrid plan. My wife works as a middle school teacher and I work as a teacher at Redmond High School. We live with within Lake Washington School District boundaries, and we have 3 young kids. Our oldest child will be entering 2nd grade next year at Einstein Elementary, and our 2 children have been attending preschool at Timberlake Church in Redmond. The preschool at Timberlake Church is currently closed. In the fall, they're planning to reopen only part of the school that our youngest will not be able to attend. After months of searching, we have since found a new childcare option available for our youngest 2 children in the fall. This childcare only allows my wife to drop off since it opens at 7 a.m. on Redmond Ridge. The hybrid school plan presents huge logistical challenges for us. First, will there be before school childcare available? Before school care had been at Horace Mann for Einstein, I would drop my son off at 7 a.m. and he would be later bused to Einstein. If before school care is no longer offered, we will need to arrange transportation if he's to continue to go there. I honestly do not know where a transportation option would come from or who that would be. Second, what sort of childcare options could be potentially available on the days that students are not in school? Many childcare facilities have closed, are not licensed for school-age children, lack space, or are not licensed for school-age children. One of the facilities that permanently closed was one of our 2 facilities that provided care to Einstein before and after school. We typically use YMCA on early dismissal days. I imagine this would be an option for alternate days when children are not in school, as the school building would be used for other students attending school. Furthermore, nannies are already for high demand and prohibitively expensive. Au pairs are not allowed in the country until at least December 2020. We, working parents of young school-age children, are being put in a very difficult, if not impossible, situation. The needed childcare infrastructure does not yet exist. LWSD leadership is needed to facilitate the creation of childcare options that would allow parents to work while their children are in school part-time. Thank you so much for your time and attention. I appreciate all the hard work you're doing in these difficult times. Director Bleasner, would you please read the next comment I received? Oh, and you're on mute.
Aye. Lisa Berenson, lead AP. I have sent numerous responses to Lake Washington School District surveys and emails regarding the opening of schools in person. I won't go into all of it again. However, as of today, Monday, July 13th, the Bellevue School District is working towards opening school in person 5 days a week. My understanding from OSPI and Olympia, equity and equality is a factor in opening school in person, as well as numerous other factors. If Bellevue School District is aiming for 5 days a week in-person instruction as the norm, well then Lake Washington School District and other neighboring school districts all should and need to be working together to achieve the same goal. 5 days a week in person, and the only other option is to opt out for those that want and need to homeschool. That is equality and equity. Thank you in advance for your time and consideration.
Okay, I think I'm up next. Do you show the next one as Greta Clymer? Okay. Greta Clymer, parent, volunteer, guest staff, and community member. As you apply your creative and compassionate lens to the question of how to deliver education to our children this school year, I ask that you consider these astute questions circulating on Facebook. If a teacher tests positive for COVID-19, are they required to quarantine for multiple weeks until after recovery and getting negative test results back? Excuse me. Is this paid? Is it possible for them to teach absent the quarantine? Is our sick leave policy adequate? If that teacher has 5 classes a day with 30 students each, do all 150 of those students then stay home and quarantine for 14 days until they demonstrate they have not acquired COVID-19? Can we deliver remote instruction during that time? What if someone who lives in the same house as a teacher tests positive? Does that teacher now need to take 14 days off of work to quarantine? Is that time off covered? Paid? Where is the district going to find a substitute teacher who will work in a classroom full of exposed, possibly infected students for substitute pay? Substitutes teach in multiple schools. What if they're diagnosed with COVID-19? Do all the kids in each school now have to quarantine and get tested? Who is going to pay for that? What if a student in your kid's class tests positive? What if your kid tests positive? Does every other student and teacher they have been around quarantine? Do we all get notified who is infected and when, or because of HIPAA regulations, are parents and teachers just going to get mysterious, may have been in contact emails all year long? What is this stress going to do to our teachers? How does it affect their health and well-being? How does it affect their ability to teach? How does it affect the quality of education they are able to provide? What is it going to do to our kids? What are the long-term effects of consistently being stressed out? How will it affect students and faculty when the first teacher in their school dies from this? The first parent of a student who brought it home, the first kid? How many more people are going to die that otherwise would not have if we had stayed home longer? I urge you to think long term. If we can't deliver in-person instruction in a manner which is safe for all, it is a foolish short-term decision to offer it. Be courageous. Don't bow to pressure from the federal government. It is not your job to restart the economy. It is your job to deliver education in a manner which is safe for your staff, the children, and the community. If you are not presently equipped to do so, the focus should be on how to deliver education remotely and how to become equipped to deliver in-person education safely over time. And remember, racial equity is an essential component of these and all other leadership decisions.
Okay, thank you. The next category of public comment for which we received comment for tonight is on inclusion and equity. I can't recall if I asked Director Stewart to go next or Director Carlson, but let's go with Director Stewart if you're able to. The first one I have is from Chanel Murray.
Okay. Chanel Murray, we need racial awareness / equity to be at the forefront of everything that we do. We need to implement the following measures. Increase funding for LWSD's equity department. We need to work with Gloria Henderson to make sure she has the financial resources needed. Far too often, these departments are least funded and understaffed. The district level equity team should have voting power. The team is currently an advisory team. Long-term racial awareness training during LEAP week. This needs to be our focus. Continuous trainings throughout the year for all staff, at least 2 staff-wide trainings per semester. All LEAP meetings designated to race / equity.
Okay.
That's it.
Our next comment is on the same topic. This is from Stephen Hyndon, Kamiakin Middle School. It concerns me that as our staff exits for summer, the LWA pursues a racial equity measures to get your attention with demands that you do not represent nor were even discussed with LWA members like myself. I'm a school counselor with 24 years in Lake Washington. I'm barely keeping up to emails and texts in the close of the year as my work duties continue this week. It alarms me to come to the racial equity demands only now, too late to submit by a deadline, my comments. I hope you'll read this before any reactionary decisions are made to reactionary demands amidst hot topics in our country, too easily compounded by pandemic concerns. Most concerning is to see LWEA ask for the end of the SRO program. Based on what? I've seen this be a positive and effective program in my middle schools for over 2 decades. And they promise what? Propose what? More social, emotional, mental health supports? This is not working toward the future. It's impulsive and a bandwagon reaction trickling down to a small group of LWA that appear to be pushing an agenda apart from the majority of members. Please slow this down and take the thoughtful steps to evaluate a program before moving monies to other areas that we can barely sustain in normal, non-COVID times. That's the end of that one. So, Eric, I think we're back to the top of the batting order.
Yeah, I was trying to unmute myself there. Okay. The next is from, apologies if I don't pronounce the name, I do not pronounce the name correctly, Matab Mahmoudazadeh. I am a parent of a multiracial Black and Middle Eastern child. I have 2 school-age children, but after my daughter's experience as a student and interviewing the principal of the elementary school, I pay for my son to attend a private school because of fears for his safety. Physically, but also emotionally, as I witness spirit murdering of Black children in your school district at all levels. I state this as an experienced educator with 22 years of teaching practice. Your niceness and ignorance and omission of Black lives of students in your schools is violence. I demand as a parent that before my child enters in the fall, in the short term, all schools do mandatory training on race equity in your schools, that Black children are placed in classes together with the most culturally competent teacher and advisors, and Black counselors are hired in your schools. In the face of increased racial tension, I am afraid for my child's safety, and I know that you don't care because I see what you do. In the long term, Black parents of your students need to have agency and rights to state their experience with your district and our children's experience to help form some long-term solutions. But in the immediate, this is what I demand as a parent. Your district cannot continue to operate with racist practice because it does harm to all students, Black, brown, and white. Director Blazner, would you read one more from this section, the next one in the list?
Absolutely. So I'll be reading from the FABSE, FABC of Lake Washington, which is the Family Alliance of Black Student Excellent in Lake Washington. The Family Alliance of Black Student Excellent Lake Washington appeals to you on behalf of Lake Washington School District Black, Brown, and African American students, both present and future, impacted by the racial trauma and systemic oppression that exists within the Lake Washington School District. Under this board's leadership, the Lake Washington School District's commitment, as stated on the district website, is that each student will graduate prepared to lead a rewarding and responsible life as a contributing member of our community and greater society. As parents of Black, Brown, and African American students, we believe that this commitment should include Black, Brown, and African American students. If that commitment was upheld for Black students, we would not be speaking before you today on this issue, as so many have done in recent past. We do not see, hear, or believe that there is a sense of urgency to implement, to fully support staff and fund the racial equity work required to dismantle the inequities forced upon Black students in Lake Washington. The Lake Washington School District maintains a ranking of second in the state, while thousands of its students matriculate through the district, never having had at least one Black classroom teacher or educator. This is a harmful practice, not just to Black and Brown students, but it also puts white and other races of students at risk of knowingly and unknowingly adopting racist attitudes and behaviors. While all of our students and their families have been adversely impacted by COVID-19 in one way or another, the trauma, terror, and isolation of Lake Washington School District's Black students is compounded by the visceral killing of Mr. George Floyd, but not to forget Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and all of the citizens who lost their lives at the hands of members of our society who matriculated through districts mirroring this one. Black students have appealed before this board in the past, reliving their racial trauma in hopes that their stories would be heard and acted upon with measurable outcomes. We will no longer subject our Black children to the trauma of appealing to this board. On their behalf, we demand that you uphold your commitment to serve all students and immediately. Hire Black school counselors at elementary, middle, and high school before the fall of 2020. LWSD has employed over 2,000 certificated staff members, including classroom teachers. Less than 20 of them are Black and/or African American. Hire Black educators in proportion to the number of schools and students in the district. Demonstrate how the ongoing feedback, surveys, and responses the district continues to draw from the parents of Black and African American students translates to measurable outcomes. Transparency. Share the hiring, promotion, and retention practices of the district's current Black staff members. Approve an equity budget that the Department of Equity, Opportunity, and Inclusion requires to support training and staffing needs. Partner with the LWEA and establish required racial equity, anti-bias, and ethnic racially responsive teaching practices. And lastly, update the curricula and reconstruct the deficit-based instruction of Black history. Thank you.
Do you want me to read? What would you like me to read next? I can't hear you. Muted.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to summarize or list who else submitted public comment under this topic, and then we will, because we are short on time, move to the first public comment it's submitted for the Juanita High School mascot.
Okay.
So we also received public comment on this topic from Abby Hu, a rising senior at Eastlake High School, Cleo Roan of Eastlake High School, Crystal Vesperis of Eastlake High School, Adam White, Delaney Chenevert a Redmond High School student. Vivek Gopalam, a rising senior at Tesla STEM. Jennifer Marin, an Eastlake High School teacher. Jana Mansour. Jocelyn Randall, a parent in our district. Steph Hodges. And Mickey Stewart. And for those whose comments we did not read aloud tonight, again, the board has received all of those on Friday, and then a complete list tonight, and has those in hand, and we'll be reviewing those. Director Sage, if you could read the first public comment received for the Juanita High School mascot.
It's from Ian Schuler. Hello, my name is Ian Schuler, and I graduated from Juanita High School in 2000. I'm writing this letter on Juneteenth because it is time to remove the Rebels mascot. The reason is simple. It upholds a history of racism. The fact that it's subtle and seen as controversial versus overly racist should only be examined as a sign of our privilege to take what we want from history and not listen to the experience of others. Even 20 years ago, I didn't feel like we were being honest about the mascot and its history. The mascot and crest had been modified, but students still flew Confederate flags on their cars and in official pep rallies. If you haven't seen it yourself, you've heard the stories. And that stuff doesn't just go away unaddressed. I heard last year the students voted to keep the mascot, but it shouldn't be their responsibility to decide to remove a racist mascot. Yes, let students pick the new mascot, but the administration is ultimately accountable. The rules, whatever they may be, can be changed. Do the right thing. We need to talk about race in our high school curriculum, and this would be an excellent way to openly own our history and move forward. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Director Sage. Director Stewart, are you able to read the next, I think it's from David Jennings, the next public comment we received? Director Stewart, I don't know if maybe you're on mute. I'm not able to hear you.
Sorry, I'm off mute. Could Chris read this one perhaps as opposed to me?
Not a problem. Director Carlson, are you able to read the public comment received from David Jennings?
Well, having been accused of being a racist after last week's meeting, I'm real thrilled to be presenting this again. So I'm going to take this on because I believe in hearing from people, not because I believe in the point of view. So as a Juanita High School graduate who now resides near many Civil War battlefields, I'm writing to ask that the board superintendent not change the name of Juanita High School's mascot, the Rebels, for these regions. Changing the name of the school or its mascot is expensive. I would rather see those funds used for education. 2, Juanita High School and the Rebels mascot have no connection with the Confederate States of America. It should be simple and straightforward to communicate that, as well as the broader positive meanings of the word rebel. 3, it should be relatively easy to prevent and correct any misguided or confused individual who says or does anything to portray such a link. For example, by wearing a gray Civil War uniform to get to a game, or by designing a yearbook cover that connotes the CSA battle flag, which happened 30 years ago. Changing the mascot because of the word rebel is not a logical response to complaints of racism. The word rebel is embedded throughout our language and culture, from Star Wars to rock and roll. If anyone tries to connect Juanita Rebels to the CSA, school leadership, teachers, parents, and students should address that directly. Communication and teaching can also prevent mistaken associations with the Civil War. 5, many mascots and logos around the country have the potential to be misconstrued. Some should be changed, others just need to be clarified. It's the responsibility of each organization's leadership to communicate the meaning and history of their symbols and images. 6, the Juanita High School crest or logo could be tweaked or updated to help clarify that there is no link to the CSA. For example, by updating the swords, as the University of Virginia recently did. 7, changing the mascot would teach a harmful lesson that merely getting signatures on an online petition can trigger expensive changes with the costs borne by others. 8, when students report racist behavior, that should be addressed immediately and directly. The school should have clear policies and processes for dealing with that problem. Changing the mascot will not help that situation. It's understandable that some students want to challenge the status quo, to question authority, and to cause change as they transition to adulthood. You might even call them rebels. And my concern with reading this is that, Mark, I am not thrilled about only reading the anti, or being the only board member the anti. So,
Apologies, Director Carlson. I would have read it myself had I realized
That's all right.
that was. So thank you for doing that. Director Stewart, would you please read the letter that we received from the
Sure.
ASB of High School?
Yes, Juanita Ferrara, Juanita ASB co-president. Greetings, members of the school board. In this letter, we wish to address the policy for changing the school mascot. We understand that in light of recent events, the policy to change the mascot could be amended. If this were to happen, we have a few requests and ideas in mind from your Juanita High School ASB team, which includes only our Juanita community can vote. This excludes other Lake Washington School District schools and their respective feeder schools. Only students get to vote / decide upon the changing of the mascot. Excludes influence from community, including but not limited to parents and alumni. Incorporating and allowing younger students to vote. Mike and middle school, Van Hill Middle School students, since they are the feeder schools and will be directly affected for their future. A process in which everyone can mutually agree upon the outcome based on the fairness and equity of said process. Inform and educate students on both perspectives of changing the mascot before voting begins. In the current voting process, a non-decisive vote counts as a vote against changing the mascot. We would like to see the decision will be based upon the majority of those who vote and not the majority of student body as a whole. In the making of this petition, require the options of which the mascot will be changed to, instead of a blanket statement that the mascot will be changed, or decide what the new mascot will be, or narrow a list of options before the old one is voted out. When we last took our mascot to vote in 2018, our students were unsure of voting at all because they did not know what the mascot would be changed to. Incorporate a student voice to prevent any confusion regarding the wording of the ballot. In 2018, our students were confused if voting yes meant to change the mascot or to keep the mascot. We cannot thank you enough for your time. We hope you'll take our considerations into account for the policy.
Thank you, Director Stewart. And then we also received a public comment tonight from Jennifer Parkinson, who asked to retain the Rebel mascot name. Okay, that ends public comment tonight. Thank you all who provided public comment and also those who have sent email correspondence to the board on these issues in advance of the meeting. They've been received by all board members and read. The next item on our agenda tonight is the consent agenda. Is approval of the July 13 consent agenda. I will now entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Move approval.
Second.
It has been moved by Director Carlson and seconded by Director Bleasner to approve the consent agenda. Dr. Holman, will you poll the board?
Absolutely. Director Sage?
Yes.
Director Bleasner?
Yes.
Director Carlson?
Yes.
Vice President Stewart?
Mark, you're muted.
No, I'm not, but I couldn't hear John. Yes.
And President LaLiberty?
Yes. The consent agenda passes unanimously. The next item is the first item on our non-consent agenda tonight, and that is an update on the Juanita High School mascot. Dr. Holman, will you please provide the board the update?
Yeah, let me go ahead and pull up a presentation. Well, I am not Diane Jenkins. Can you give me permission to share?
Yes, I will do that. Just a second, please.
Thank you. While I'm getting that permission and pulling up the presentation. I do just want to comment that I have received borderline hundreds and hundreds of emails on the topic of the Juanita High School mascot, and I do want to express great appreciation to our community, whether they are for changing the mascot or against changing the mascot. I have reviewed email after email, and there was great respect regardless of the position people had, and so I just want to show that appreciation. And by and large, yes, there was a few emails that were a little bit snarky, if you will, but that's okay. We received a lot of comments on this, and so through that, it helps inform us as we go through this work. And so as Diane is pulling this up and giving me permission, I will. Diane, please let me know when I have permission.
John, the controls have been changed, so I can't find where to give you permission from.
Okay, so if you pull up the show participants screen. Let's see. So I don't know if anyone else on the meeting has the ability to give me permissions to share. Let's see, do any of my cabinet colleagues have the ability to share their screen?
No, but Diane, there's the controls have changed so that they're across the top right. And so there's the participant, the two little figures. And if you click on that, you should be able to right click next to somebody's name and give them.
When I right click, it just shows pin. When I right click or left click, it just shows pin on his name. It doesn't give me the options to make him a presenter.
It shows zero presenters at the top of the meeting, so.
Let's see.
Diane, I'm
Yes.
sorry, if you try the ellipses at the top,
Yes.
then click on meeting details and see if that, I'm just trying to be of help.
Sure, I appreciate the help.
I don't know if that's the way to do it, but
Hey, John, I wonder if it's because it's set up under the admin calendar rather than a person. So I wonder if the admin calendar is the presenter.
Yep, that
Or-
is probably it.
Okay,
May I suggest we take a break?
so I
Yeah.
wonder if we need to resend the
give it a-
meeting invite out.
Just a moment.
Yeah,
Just
why don't
solve
we
this.
go ahead and pause the meeting for about 5 minutes? We'll resend a link to this group, and John Knorr, I believe, will just be able to stream right from that link on this computer. So I will go ahead and send that out to make sure I'm a presenter. So John, go ahead and pause the meeting for 5 minutes, and we'll reconvene at about 5:45.
Okay, real quick for those who are watching at home, the existing video link you're watching on should continue. It's our link to be able to participate in the meeting that needs to change. So we will be in recess for 5 minutes, and then the video will reappear.
Great. Eric, you're going to restart?
Yes, I will just,
I'll tell you.
I'll just
Okay.
go back to this.
We're ready to go.
Okay, great. Thank you all for staying with us tonight. We've fixed our technical issues. I'll reiterate that the first item on our agenda, non-consent agenda tonight, is an update on the Juanita High School mascot that will be presented now by Dr. Holman.
Great, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we'll assume that you all can see that. And so at the last board meeting, the board asked me to review the Juanita High School mascot. You received significant public comment at that time. Again, today we received public comment. Since that time, we have also received email from students, staff, parents, community members regarding the mascot, and both to change the mascot and to maintain the mascot. So I, as the board asked, reviewed the situation and want to just provide an update as to some of the information that I gleaned from my review, and also next steps and a decision. And so I think it's important to really point out that in 1971, the mascot of Rebel was selected for Juanita High School, and on the school's website, it really talks about why was the mascot selected, and it really was about the deviation from standard educational methodologies. If I remember correctly, they had something like a 17-period day where they had 20-minute sessions, and students had some in-person large group instruction, small group instruction, some individual time where they were doing homework. So it really was quite a unique experience in that environment. And so that's where it states on the website where the concept and mascot of a Rebel came from. And so just want to walk through a few of the different events that have taken place over the last couple of years related to the Juanita High School mascot. In the school year 2016-17, the board and superintendent at that time, Dr. Pierce, received concerns about the Juanita High School mascot and the term Rebel, stating that it was linked to the Confederacy, stating that it was racist. And at that time, Superintendent Pierce did a review of the situation and ultimately updated administrative policy. At that time, administrative policy was updated to identify a process that a school could go through at the student level to change a school mascot. And it essentially identified students had to get a certain level of support on a petition. That petition would be submitted to their administrative team at the school. The administrative team would then review that with district officials, and if it was deemed necessary, then it would get sent back to the school to participate in a vote. That process was initiated. Students submitted the information. They went through a voting process, and actually the students voted to maintain their current mascot at that time. It was about a little over a third of students voted to get a new mascot, and about just a little less than 2/3 of the students voted to maintain the current mascot. And then in June 2020, additional concerns regarding the Juanita High School mascot were brought to both the school board and district administration. And at the June 22nd meeting, the school board asked me to review the situation and to bring an update to the board tonight at this meeting. I want to talk a little bit about some of the review that I did. Spent some time talking with students, parents, and administrators at Juanita High School. Students that had written a letter to the board, I spent about an hour with them, just hearing from them about their thinking and some of the impacts that they thought about the mascot. Reached out to our PTA representatives at Juanita High School just to hear their thinking about kind of the state of the situation at Juanita High School and their view. And they were articulate that their role really is to support Juanita High School from the parent lens, and they did a nice job discussing that. I also did some research around the topic of the concept of a mascot named Rebel. And there's actually dissertations done on this topic, and so read that review of the literature, and it really pointed to there are Rebel mascots across this country, all with historical ties to different meanings. Some of those meanings tied to the Confederacy, others not. I also did a review of our district administrative policy. We currently have policy related to naming schools and mascots. I reviewed that policy. I also reviewed our other policies, such as our human dignity policy, our anti-discrimination policy, to make sure that as we are thinking about the naming of schools and mascots, that was also part of the process and a lens we were using as we were making decisions. And then I went back and reviewed the school board's discussion related to this topic and operational expectation 10 and the discussion that's going to take place after this presentation regarding OE 10 and a potential update to that. So I want to talk about policy update that I did. As the board knows, administrative policy is delegated to the superintendent, and so I went through, did a review of that. Did a review in light of the situation that occurred 2 years ago, in light of the current situation we're in, to see if an update was needed. And I determined that an update was needed, worked with my team at the cabinet level just to have others review the policy with me. They gave some feedback, and today that official policy was updated on our website. And so if anyone goes to our website, you would find policy 6970 and procedure 6970P have both been updated. And just to highlight some of those updates, I removed the school-based process for changing mascots. And the reason I did that was what I know with that process that occurred a couple of years ago. That was a process, rather than uniting a school, it really was divisive. And so I felt like this was a decision that really needs to be made at the administrative level. And so I removed that language from the process. I also clarified the categories for naming schools to be crystal clear as to what are the different categories that schools can use as they're going through a process. We just named 3 of our new schools, and so had this been in place, then this would have also applied to those schools as they were naming. We also added language to require that school names and mascots are in alignment with policy and values. And when I say policy and values, it points directly back to our human dignity policy and our anti-discrimination policy, as well as our board stated values that you're going to talk about next in your OE10 discussion. I also added language to clarify that the superintendent has the right to remove a school name or mascot, and it really is given specific criteria and in assuring that if a name or mascot is not in alignment with our policies or our policy 6970, that I do have the right to remove that name or mascot, and students would then go through a process to rename or identify a new mascot. And this is the specific language in 6970. It says, should the superintendent determine that a facility name or mascot does not meet the requirements of this policy, he or she may immediately remove the name or mascot and require the school to go through the selection process in order to adopt a new school name or mascot. And the policy requirements that are referred there is really around the prior policy language that says mascots shall be culturally and racially sensitive and appropriate and comply with our district's human dignity and non-discrimination policies. From my review of the situation at Juanita High School, the Juanita High School mascot was put in place with good intentions. I have no reason to believe that the term rebel in its inception at Juanita High School was to honor or glorify slavery or to be a reflection of the Confederacy or the Confederate values. I also know that the term rebel does have direct linkages to the Confederacy. And when I reviewed the research around the term rebel, it continued to point back each time to the Confederacy, and that link is definitely, when people hear the term rebel, more often than not, they link that word to the Confederacy. It links to terms such as the South, and it's referencing the region that fought for slaveholding. It refers back to the Confederacy, the idea of the stars and bars or the Confederate flag, or the concept of the lost cause, which is really a movement around the lost cause of the Confederate Army losing the war, and in that they lost the right to own and maintain slaves. I also know that there are other linkages to the term rebel or rebel mascots, but the primary connection with the term is really to the Confederacy. One of the things, as I did continued research and reading around Juanita High School, back when we did a review of this a couple of years ago, as well as information received, there are unfortunate historical references or visualizations at Juanita High School to the Confederacy. I don't know the depth of that. I've heard differing views on the depth of those historical references or connections, but what I do know is, for whatever reason, there were historical references and visualizations that occurred at Juanita High School connecting the school to the Confederacy. That is something that just occurred, whether that was isolated incidents or whether that was mainstream, that I don't know. It appears to be isolated incidents, but we know that there is this historical reference at Juanita High School. I think one of the other things that I heard as I did this review is to have students, staff, community have to explain the intent or meaning away of the rebel mascot that assure people that it isn't what they think it might be or that it isn't connected to the Confederacy. That's a challenge in this situation. And in hearing from a number of new students, particularly students that moved to the Juanita area from the South, it was actually a shocking experience for them to move into a community and to see the mascot at the local high school be a rebel, since they had gone through school. Learning and education around the Confederacy started very young, and so for them it was almost abrupt when they came and saw that the mascot at Juanita High School was a rebel, and they were thinking as they moved to this area that it wouldn't be further from that type of mascot that they would see at their local high school. And so all of this leads to the decision that I've been asked to make, and so I've determined that the rebel mascot does not meet the criteria that's set forth in Administrative Policy 6970. I believe that even though the intentions around the mascot were set forth were good, I don't believe that, given the ongoing ties, given the connection that people make with the term rebel to the Confederacy, that it meets our policy. And so because of that, I'm immediately removing rebels as the Juanita High School mascot. I believe in that it's a chance for the school to identify a new mascot and to really start that next chapter. And with that, I will be reaching out to Dr. Matt Livingston. He's the Director of Secondary Education for that region, to ask him to work with Principal Clapp to start the process to change and identify a new mascot. And some of the thinking behind the decision, that regardless of the intent, that the term rebel and its multiple definitions, but the specific definition and connection to the Confederacy, they just do not align with our stated values as a district. And I know there are people that have said we just need to explain what it is. And the problem with that is lots of people don't ask, many people make assumptions, and we have students that come to our school each day that, regardless of the explanation that they've received, they continue to see a term that it has direct connections to something that doesn't align with Juanita High School values nor our values as a district. I believe a mascot should act as a mechanism that unites a student body, and right now we have a mascot that isn't uniting the full student body, and to me, I think that is a problem. To me, no student, staff member, parent, community member, or alumnus should need to explain the intent of the mascot. And in that, I believe our mascot and the symbols and ways we represent our schools and district should explain for themselves what we are about as a school and as a community. I also believe that every student has the right to be safe and to an inclusive school environment, that every student walking into the doors of Juanita High School should have the experience of knowing that Juanita High School is there for them, that everything about that school is inclusive and meaningful for them. And so this is probably longer than I should have written on a PowerPoint slide, but I wanted to put down a few words around what I think is the opportunity here for Juanita High School current students, staff, parents, alumni, and community, that they have the opportunity to write the next chapter of Juanita High School. Juanita High has always been a place that welcomes unique individuals and helps them find a place. It is truly a special place. I understand there are stakeholders that do not agree with this decision. I do not disparage them for their disagreement. The connection to a school and those experiences help to create memories and meaningful human connections. A common identity, such as a mascot, can help define those memories and connections. Regardless of your view of this decision, I hope everyone connected with Juanita can come together to take this next step forward. We all have a responsibility for current and future students to make Juanita a great place. And with that, I'll take questions from the board.
Thank you, Dr. Holman. So if board members who have questions could use the hand feature, that'll take them in the order I see them. I'll first take Director Carlson.
Thanks. I thank you for the thoughtful approach to this, John. I know that we're human. We make mistakes. And our previous effort to try and
Chris, you're breaking up. You may want to just turn your video off to see if you can stream your audio.
to the community.
I think Director Carlson, you've frozen. So I'm going to.
I'm having terrible network trouble. I just want to say that I don't believe that people who are nostalgic for the Rebel, that does not mean they're racist. It is okay to have enjoyed the mascot at the time. It was a mascot that was picked for certain purposes. Those purposes are now no longer easily understood. Most of the people who were there for the picking of it do not have moved on. And the rest of us are left to live with it. And the consequences of that, particularly for our minority students, are unfortunate and warrant the removal of the mascot. It is not that it is something that inherently anybody who enjoyed being a Rebel is racist. I do want to thank.
Thank you, Director Carlson. Director Sage and then Director Stewart.
Yes, thank you for your time that you put into this, Dr. Holman. I know it is very emotional, and having 3 Juanita High graduates myself, I've got Letterman's jackets sitting in the closet that will never be worn again. So it is very emotional, and I appreciate you taking that time to meet with the ASB students, to meet with the PTA, to actually, learn from the people who attend the school, the feelings surrounding the mascot. I have one question about how a new mascot is chosen. I want to make sure I completely understand. I know that you outlined for a new school and a new mascot, it seems like students have a lot of input into what the choices are. I think there's 5. Is that the same for renaming a mascot? Do Juanita High School students get to choose 5 and then?
Yeah, thank you for that question. It is the same process that a new school or a current school goes through. And so there will be a naming committee comprised of parents, students, staff, school administration, and they will go through a process. It's a full student body process where students get to submit options. That committee will go through, evaluate. Then it comes back to myself and a team, and we kind of have the final say over which options the students will get to vote on. And what we do is we evaluate less about, do we like any of them, but we're going to evaluate to make sure that it's in alignment with our policy and values. And if not, then that's when a name would be removed. The naming committee is also going to be charged with that. So my expectation is anything that comes to me would already have been vetted through that lens. And then those names that are approved will go on to a ballot, and each student will receive one ballot and have the opportunity to vote one time.
Thank you. And the naming committee exists of parents and students and staff?
Yep, parents, students, staff, and school administration.
Okay, and students have an equal voice right up there.
Oh, the students do a great job in those processes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Director Stewart?
I'd like to especially thank John. You moved quickly, you moved decisively, and I appreciate it. You also did it in a very thoughtful manner. That's to be commended. I appreciate the effort, and I think that the students do too. Granted, there are some that would like to keep their name, but it's one of those situations where you have a name, it had one meaning, and someone hijacked it, and they hijacked it so well that you can't explain it away. And if you have to explain it each time you say it, it diminishes the original value, to be quite frank. It not only diminishes the original value, but it also then takes on a whole new meaning, which unfortunately has occurred. But I'd like to thank you and your staff for handling this quickly and decisively. And I think that the students will appreciate it, not only the students of color, but also I've heard from a number of parents of students of immigrants who also felt the same unwelcomeness, if you will, by the name of the mascot. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Any other questions or comments from board members?
Yes, I raised my hand.
All right, Director Belisaire, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, and I won't reiterate what has been said, but I did have a question. If you could just explain the rationale behind having this be a superintendent decision, whereas prior it was the board of director doing a final approval. I'd just like to hear that.
Yeah, so, one of the things that as we continue to implement our previous policy governance and now coherent governance, it's really about maintaining, the board has given the superintendent the authority for operational decisions. And the concept of naming a school really falls into the bucket of an operational decision. And so versus having that be a board decision, that's why it changed to a superintendent decision. And I think your next discussion around OE10 then highlights how does the board, what role does the board play in the operations of the district? And it really is around setting the expectations and parameters that I am to operate under as the superintendent. And so that's how the decision was made to modify our policy because, 17 years ago, we were not a policy governance district. And so all of the policies were board policies. When we shifted to this model, that's when there was the deviation between board policy and administrative policy. Great question, though.
No, thanks. And that will help to lend to our discussion on the upcoming piece of the agenda coming forward. And I would like to say, as we all know, this is that first step actually in many things as we speak towards working with equity in those pieces. There are addressing some of these historical challenges that we've had within our district and being decisive about it and moving forward is greatly appreciated. I will say that going back and getting some of the history was beneficial. I did too read the dissertation on the history of Rebel as mascots throughout our country. And that is a very sort of helpful context in which to put this in. And as we all know, our communities are different than where we were 20, 30 years ago. Very different people, much more diverse, cosmopolitan. And so it is important that we continue to adapt and change to those as well. And so I see this as something that potentially that looking at names and mascots will be something we do have to pay attention to, because they can shift over time and in the views of our community, and we need to represent those values going forward. So appreciate that work and look forward to seeing what the new option is, especially with a new high school opening in the fall as well. So that's very exciting. So thank you.
That's a pretty good segue to our next topic from Director Belizner as well. I'll just say two things. One, John, Dr. Holman, I agree with the decision. I thank you for making, good job making the right decision. But I also really appreciate the process and the thoughtfulness by which you went through it. I think that this is a divisive issue. The fact is that 2 years ago, a majority of the student body wanted to retain a mascot. That's illustrative of the level of disagreement on this issue. And so I do think it's important that we were really thoughtful about it, and that we had a reasoned and thoughtful decision. I appreciate both the thought that went to the decision and the process that you went through to come up with that decision. So thank you.
Great, thank you.
Before we move to the next topic, any last comments or questions from board members? No. The next topic on the agenda is related to this, and that is the non-consent agenda item is policy operational expectation 10, and that is the board's expectations for the learning environment and treatment of students. And particularly on the agenda tonight is a potential policy modification to operational expectation 10. So Dr. Holman, are you able to present the information to the board?
Yeah, so much of the situation recommendation that you have in your packet is similar, a lead-in to this discussion, and so I won't go ahead and review the entire situation around the Juanita High School mascot. I really just probably reviewed that in my presentation as well. What tonight is about is, at the board's last meeting, there was a discussion around operational expectation 10, the learning environment and treatment of students. And it was decided that at the next meeting that the board would have a discussion around modifying OE10 with language that was specific to the board's expectations related to naming schools and mascots. And so the board did determine to continue that discussion tonight. And so in your packet, you also have an updated OE10 for your review, and has language that was slightly modified from what Vice President Stewart brought forward last meeting, but in essence, it is the exact same language with just a couple of minor tweaks. And so my recommendation tonight is that the Board of Directors adopt OE10, Learning Environment and Treatment of Students, as modified to include OE 10.8, which is a statement related to the board's expectations for naming schools and mascots.
Okay, so the board, two ways we can go right now. One, if there are any questions on what Dr. Holman just presented or on the policy language as presented in our meeting packet, we'll take those now. Otherwise, I will now entertain a motion for the board to adopt OE10 as modified. So if anyone has any questions, please raise your hand. Okay, and I see 3 hands. So Director Sage, we'll start with you.
Thank you. When I was looking at the language for the proposal on policy 10.8, operational expectation 10.8, I noticed that in many of our other policies, we include gender expression or identity or identity, and also immigration status. And I would like to be consistent with our other policies and make certain that, well, we're consistent.
Pugh, Director Sage. Director Stewart, and then Director Bleasner. Oh, sorry. I don't know if I was on mute. Director Stewart and then Director Bleasner.
Thank you. I'm having a little bit of trouble with the transmission here. I would like to suggest, in addition to what Director Sage has said, which I think is a very good idea, I'd also like to suggest that I know historically the word creed has been used for God knows how many decades, if not centuries. My concern is that it took both Eric and myself search through Google and Bing and God knows where else. And can you folks still hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, it looks like I cut out from the meeting for a minute. I'd like to suggest that we change creed to religion. Creed took us a good long amount of time to determine that it's still valid, it's still useful, but I'm afraid that in today's vernacular, it's just not used enough to be specific enough, and I don't want anyone to ever question the reason why creed would be there and not religion. So let's put in religion as opposed to creed. That's it.
So, Mark, the version that was distributed has creed and religion. Are you suggesting that we just drop creed as redundant with religion?
I thought the creed had been taken. I thought religion had been taken out, and only creed was left.
Yeah. So in the board folder, it had creed and religion.
That's why I was suggesting it, Chris.
Okay, it does, Director Stewart. I do see that now as well.
Yeah. So anyway, I support the notion of removing creed as redundant and somewhat arcane.
Director Bleasner, your hand is raised.
Thank you. Actually, what I would like to ask is if we could just have the amendment read so that anybody who doesn't have it in front of them has the chance to hear it.
Yeah, I think I was going to get to that as well.
And then I do have a question from
Is it possible to share the screen so we can have the language? It's on page, in our board packet on page 29, the last page of the board packet.
I would have to switch over my other computer because it's on that
Dr. Holman,
computer.
you're muted.
Thank you. I have it on my other computer, not the computer I'm presenting from. So I can grab that and present it. It'll take me about one minute to grab it, unless someone else has it that they can share.
Yeah, no problem. I guess I have it up. Am I able to share my screen?
Yes, you are.
Okay.
Success. We can see you. Just blow it up a little, Eric.
Well, all right.
Hit the plus sign. There we go. Nice.
All right. Does that work?
That's great.
Okay, and I will read it aloud as well. The proposed amendment to operational expectation 10 would read that the superintendent may not allow any current or future building names, mascots, nicknames, logos, activities, or events to reference or portray bias, derogatory connotations, or prejudice associated with race, color, creed, income, religion, sex, age, national origin, ethnicity, marital status, sexual orientation, gender, honorably discharged veteran or military status, or the presence of any mental or physical disability. And then just to recap, we've heard comments from a few board members tonight that we should consider including gender identity, immigration status, and moving creed as redundant and arcane with reference to religion.
If I may recommend that we do get a motion on the floor, and then those can be put forward as amendments in regards to that.
Yes, thank you. I was just recapping the discussion for the viewers since we were talking about language that they did not have in front of them. Okay, now that I've shared my screen, I cannot see any hands, and I'm reluctant to push too many buttons for fear of having it go away. So are there any other questions from board members? Please just go ahead.
So I just want to ask, Cassandra, you mentioned gender. Gender's in here. Were you asking for transgender to be included explicitly?
Well, I think there's lots of different ways people express their gender identity. So I'm specifically looking at encompassing everyone and making this inclusive.
Yeah, and I'm in favor of making it inclusive. I'm just saying the language here, do we call each of them out explicitly, or do we just say gender identity? So add identity after the word gender.
I think just for clarity of the record, it would be helpful if we had this discussion in the context of a motion. Sorry. To the language. So,
move adoption in.
Recommendation from Dr. Holman, the superintendent, is that the board adopt, as discussed at our last meeting, an amendment to OE 10.8 as presented on my screen. Would any board member like to make a motion?
Move adoption as amended.
Like easy hand, so if somebody could do that.
Sorry, Eric. I move adoption as amended.
Could we hear the adopted or the new language that's being now voted on?
Did my screen?
Do we need to adopt the motion first and then move to amend it?
First we move, then we amend, then we adopt.
I just need a motion. So
I would like
Director
to move that we approve 10.8 as presented.
Yeah, good start. I'll second that.
Thank you. It is moved by Director Bleasner and seconded by Director Carlson that we approve OE, the addition to operational expectation 10.8 as presented. Any discussion or amendment to that motion?
I'd like to
go ahead.
All right.
If I could just, so the discussion that I would have, and I'm in favor of having something specific in regards to this. The challenge I have is as we try to put every item in there, we're bound to leave something out. And I'm fearful we're actually making this more strict than we want it to be, and that can be done elsewhere. I wonder, would it be possible to have an amendment that it ends with prejudice, period? Portray bias, derogatory connotations, or prejudice. And those categories are all those pieces that is the lens that's to be utilized in which looking at things, but we don't need to call it out here. That's just part of the monitoring that goes forward. So I guess that's my concern is we're limiting ourselves in this environment.
Okay. Thank you, Director Bleasner. Director Sage, I think you were about to comment.
Well, now that I've heard Director Bleasner, I do wonder what else we're leaving out. And I would be concerned about leaving something else out. I spent the last 2 weeks trying to think of what we were leaving out. And perhaps I have not been, exhaustively extensive in that research. But I would like it spelled out somewhere, including all of these things. I don't know if that's best practice on the administration side or how we would ensure that all of these things in specific are not allowed to portray bias and prejudice.
I'm going to call Dr. Holman and then Dr. Carlson.
And so just to comment on the question of does this live in administrative policy as well? So in the presentation regarding the Juanita High mascot, I referenced 2 specific policies. One, the human dignity policy, and forgive me if I believe it's 4010, and the non-discrimination policy, which I believe is 5010. Both of those really outline each of these categories of individuals, groups. Some are protected classes in the list you have here, some are not, but those really are the policies that help us operate to make sure that we are not portraying bias using derogatory language or connotations or acting with prejudice. And so that really is the policy that directs our work around that.
I do see in our human dignity policy that we do specifically call out gender expression or identity, but not immigration status.
Director Carlson?
Oh, actually, I'm very much in favor of what Siri suggests, because a broader policy is not something that gets nitpicked on whether or not something was in it or not. Here, our policy statement is more of a values statement, and the operational policy is on John's end. I believe that the administrative policies are precise enough that they and abide by the intent, the value that's expressed here. Therefore, I think it's best to have it live specifically over on the administrative side, where it's under administrative control and doesn't require us to debate it one way or the other. If there's something that someone knows is missing, that the superintendent can make an ad with a consult of the board. John?
Regarding immigration status, I don't know if Associate Superintendent Mike Van Orden knows the specific laws related to our requirements as a public educational institution regarding students of immigrant status or of immigration status, as we're thinking about naming schools and mascots here. And so I know what the regulations are. I can't specifically cite what the laws are, but we are accountable to assuring that we are not prejudice against immigration status.
Okay, I don't know if Director Van Orden is available right now. Director Stewart, you had your hand up next, but if you'll permit me, I'm just going to, for those watching at home, I just want to explain how our governance structure works, because I think that's important for understanding what we are doing right now. The board sets policies and potentially amends policies, as we're doing today, and then the superintendent interprets those policies and is tasked with complying with those policies. And the board, on an annual basis, monitors the superintendent's compliance with its policies. By adding to this specific language, if it were to be added, OE10, every year going forward, the superintendent would be tasked with demonstrating to the board that he or she is in compliance with this. It would require some level of review by the district of our mascots, our building names, our logos, or potentially could require some level of review, but it would require annual demonstration of compliance with the policy. So, while Dr. Coleman has removed the mascot name under our existing policy, this language, if approved, would provide additional operation of the district. Okay, I apologize, Director Stewart, on that comments or questions. And just a reminder to all, there's a motion pending currently, which would be adopt this. Director Stewart, you may.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I would like to keep the specific language in the 10.8 or whatever the number is. I think it's necessary with the idea and to show the intent of the board and that it's in conjunction with the administration's operational policies. I think it's very important for us to show that we're in sync. I also think that 20 years down the road, 30 years down the road, I don't want to see us have another board or another administration that may not understand the original intent. And I think it's necessary that we be specific. And if it needs to be amended later or another decade, so be it. But I don't want anyone have any misunderstanding of what our intent is. And I think we need to be specific.
Director Sage, you have your hand raised.
I do have my hand raised. Thank you. I already see, so to Director Bluesner and Director Carlson's point, I already see something we've missed that we did not call out on 10.8, which is you're not allowed to discriminate against service dogs or people who use service dogs. So there's got to be so much more that we have not called out. I'm wondering if we can end with portray bias or prejudice and then link it to the administrative policy that says we do not allow all these other things. And then as Dr. Holman feels there's something the administration has left out, it's on him to bring that into accord.
Thank you, Director Sage. I agree with Director Belizner's. It's not an amendment motion yet, or an amendment yet. Sorry, Director Belizner, you're muted.
I am happy to make a motion.
Yeah. May I say one thing, and then I will take that. I'm in agreement with it, and I think that what you've heard from my 2 cents is what you've heard from the board tonight is pretty clear that whether or not we explicitly list something here, the board certainly interprets policy as requiring as including those, as requiring that. And if the superintendent were to allow any building name or mascot that was prejudicial based on gender identity or military status or any of the terms that are explicitly linked, we would find that not compliant. And but I do think it is important that we are not, by being overly specific, that we are not leaving something out that we do the group that we do care deeply about. So I would be in support. So I guess I will now entertain an amendment or a motion to amend.
I'd like to amend the motion that's on the table to end it after the point of prejudice. So allow any current or future building names, mascots, nicknames, logos, activities, or events to reference or portray bias, derogatory connotations, or prejudice. And then make sure that we do a reference and linkaging to the policies that drive that. Thank you.
Was everyone able to see the language that I highlighted on my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So Director Belizner's motion, as I understand it, would be to OE 10.8 would read as I have highlighted. Is there a second?
Sorry, I'm struggling with this one, and
Is that the highlight on the screen?
So the problem is, do we get to the granular level of trying to call out every protected group, which runs the risk of leaving out groups that we've omitted, or ending it here with prejudice, but prejudice associated with personal traits, including but not limited to, would be something that would be another way to phrase this. It allows us to call out a number of them, and then to have a reference into John's administrative policies, which doesn't abdicate our job of declaring the values of the district.
Thank you, Director Carlson. There's a motion pending. So far, I've not heard a second on it. Is there a second?
I was not going to second it, but I want to get Siri's take on my language that I just threw out. You seem to be nodding, but
it doesn't have to be seconded. We can let it go, and then you can create another amendment.
Okay, I have not heard a second, so there's not one. The next one. Okay, there's no second, so the motion fails for lack of a second. Director Sage, you've had your hand raised.
I think maybe what we're struggling with right now is we have values as the board that we want inclusion. And what we might want to consider is having a value statement that prefaces operational expectation 10 that states what it is that we value about including all students in inclusion and in welcoming and in equity. And that references you're not allowed to do X, Y, Z if it portrays bias, derogatory connotations, or prejudice. And that might help link the two things. I think we're struggling over the minutia right now. No, that's not the right word. None of these different categories are minutia. My apologies. We're struggling over how to get it right in as much detail as possible, and we're not going to get it right if we're trying to do that, I think is now what I'm feeling.
So Cassandra, to what you bring up there, the learning, 10 is learning environment and treatment of students. It's much broader than this specific topic. So putting it in a preamble to 10 is actually making 10 focus too exclusively on one piece of what 10 speaks to. But I do like the notion of trying to make the values statement explicit but not limited to. So I'm going to put a different motion on the floor. So the language following prejudice associated with, between with and race, I would insert personal traits, including but not limited to. And then we can roll with the rest of it with Mark's point. We'll drop creed, because creed and religion to me are redundant, and I'd need someone to explain to me what creed means if it doesn't mean religion. And sexual orientation and gender is different than gender identity, so we want to put gender identity in explicitly, right? So those would be the three edits: drop creed, add gender identity, and then put that clause in between. With, yeah, between.
Before you finalize your motion, may I also remind you, Director Sage introduced the idea earlier that we're missing immigration status from this. Would your motion include adding that? That was something that was discussed tonight.
I certainly wouldn't want to allow a name to be named in such a way that is denigrating immigrants. So yeah, I'd be happy with that. Siri?
Okay, so I will.
You can say immigrant. I would be cautious with immigrant status based on legal issues around asking about citizenship components and our legal standing of what we need to do.
Okay.
Or if you just said immigrant.
So I'm going to articulate Dr. Stewart's motion as I understood it. I'm sorry, Director Carlson. And Director Carlson, if I get anything wrong, please let me know. So Director Carlson's motion is to board would approve in addition to OE 10.8 as presented with the following modification. After the word with, it would be personal traits, including but not limited to, comma, and then the list follows. However, it would remove creed as redundant with religion. And in addition, we are adding gender identity and immigration or immigrants.
I believe national origin likely takes care of that piece.
Okay. Are we okay with that? And national origin.
It's already there.
Is it? Okay, so then we will recap again so we're clear for the record. Director Carlson's motion is to approve the addition to OE 10.8. After the word with, there would be an addition of personal traits, including but not limited to, comma, the list that follows with the exception we are removing creed, and we are adding gender identity. That is the motion. Is there a second? Is there a second to Director Carlson's motion? Director, please.
Can I just say that I think I'm...
Second.
I heard a second from Director Stewart, I believe. Is that correct, Director Stewart?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
I didn't mean to step on Cassandra, though. Go ahead.
Not a problem. Okay, so that is the motion. I'm sorry, Dr. Holman, did you have a comment on something that you wanted to clarify earlier? And that is a motion that's pending, right? Just so everyone knows, there is a motion pending right now, but I will take Dr. Holman.
So I think, one of the things so the policy is used to set direction for the boundaries that you want me to maintain. And the more specific you get, the more ownership the board takes for the decision. That's one way to think about board policy. And so when I see it ending at prejudice, and then I don't know if you cross-reference our non-discrimination policy, or to me, the non-discrimination policy is constantly updated as the law changes, as definition changes. And so the concern of the board appears to be, we don't want to have a list that excludes individuals, and we want to be specific and make sure people know what exactly we mean. And so I don't know if ending at prejudice and cross-referencing our non-discrimination actually elevates the board's interest, or if that is then too disconnected. So I would just add that. For me, I'm comfortable either way, because I also, with the addition of 10.8, will be doing an update to the superintendent's interpretation of OE10 with this modification. And so you would also see that type of language in the superintendent's interpretation. Or you would expect to see that, that language in the superintendent's interpretation.
Thank you, Dr. Holman. Director Stage, you have your hand raised, and then I will take Director Stewart.
I was just going to say, I think I'm arguing against my own amendment. I now see that we've already failed to list something that we need to make sure doesn't get discriminated against. And so I see that we now have this shortcoming of, by trying to make it specific and inclusive in this area, we are limiting ourselves to making sure it is specific and inclusive for all, if that makes any sense. And I do think if we link, I just read the human dignity policy, if we link the human dignity policy and the anti-discrimination policy to our statement that ends in prejudice, I think that will help guide all of those things that are continuously legally updating, so we are as inclusive as possible. And also, I haven't given up on the idea of a value statement at the top of an operational expectation to try and help community understand what it is we value as a board and why we have listed these operational expectations to begin with.
Director Stewart.
Thank you. My concern, when you start having people have to jump around various places in the website to try and find a continuation of one item, 9 times out of 10, you're going to lose those folks. Same way when you've got a story that jumps from page 1 to page 12 in a newspaper, you're going to lose most of your audience. And if a person who's looking up our policies that the board has, from its policymaking side, has to then switch over to another area, you're just, one, they may not do it, but second of all, you're basically saying that we're not willing to put our money where our mouth is. I like to see it as we've amended, as Chris has stated, and I think you've read. Again, making people jump around for stuff is all it's going to do is confuse folks. And for that matter, when they if they just read the OE and say, "Oh my God, they didn't include this, this, or this," because they didn't go, then all you're going to do is create a situation you're going to have to explain away later. And the best thing to do is to prevent crises, you manage a situation. And I think by having this current language that Chris has amended with, takes care of managing the situation for future boards.
Thank you, Director Stewart.
That's all.
Is everyone able to, I tried pasting into a Word document and add and editing. Is everyone able to see that? Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Yes.
Director Carlson and then Director Bleasner.
Well, actually,
Eric,
I'd
can you
like
actually
to-
make it larger? So on my screen, it's really small, and this is the screen the public is seeing.
Okay.
Thank you.
There we go. So Mark, I agree with you that there is, I mean, John is technically correct that if we make it very tight language, then we're taking ownership. But I think that in this case, the value of not making someone look in two different places for the continuation of the policy outweighs being perfect policy governance. And I think that I understand as well as John does that it's not perfect governance language, but yet it's more useful because this is very important for the public to be able to find and understand in a simple way. So having it in both places is reasonable to me. I think this is of all of our policies, this is one that we will probably have to revisit on a routine basis very legitimately to make sure that we haven't left any gaps. But as phrased at this point, I'm very comfortable with it, and I definitely want to hear Director Bleasner's point of view.
Director Bleasner.
I think the key thing that we're working through in all of this is to ensure that the value is that we are able to ensure a welcome, inclusive environment, and we do not have names of buildings or mascots or logos that are negatively impactful upon our student body and our community, that unite, as Dr. Holman spoke to in his presentation. I'm not sure, I think we can spell it out or we don't have to. I don't think either one will change that is the overall value we're trying to get to. My reason for not wanting it there isn't to confuse people, isn't to have it not be there. It actually is to allow opportunity for the district to be much more nimble in doing things and making decisions when things change so that it's not constantly coming forward. At the same time, spelling it out is perfectly fine too. I just think you end up possibly leaving things out that can be more harmful. Either way is fine. It works. It goes forward. The value is clear in how it does so.
Dr. Holman.
You know, one thing I was thinking about as Director Bleasner was talking, if the board does choose to maintain the current language that's on the screen right now, one thing, anytime we are updating our non-discrimination policy, we would make sure that language such as this is also reviewed, and then we could bring a recommendation to the board for any modifications if federal law changes or there is another group of individuals identified as a protected class, just to make sure there's alignment.
Director Bleasner, your hand is still raised. Did you have something else to add?
Nope,
Okay.
It's down now.
Okay. I support the language as moved by Director Carlson and would vote in favor. I think that I agree with everything Director Bleasner said. I think in this situation, I want to be clear to the system and to our community. And for that reason, I think it's important to be explicit. It may be that we want to revisit this in the future. It likely will be that we want to revisit in this future, but right now I want to be explicit. So I support Dr. Carlson, or Director Carlson and Dr. Carlson's motion. Okay, any other comment from the board or questions? Otherwise, I will call for a vote on the motion. Okay. Seeing no hands and hearing nothing, I will call for a motion call for a vote to approve the motion by Director Carlson and seconded by Director Stewart to approve an addition to operational expectation 10 as shown on the screen. All those in favor, please signify by voting, saying aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion is approved unanimously. Operational expectation 10.8 will be amended to include the language as shown on the screen. Dr. Holman, was that clear for you as to, I suppose I will copy and paste this and make sure it gets into our meeting notes and into the record.
Yeah, if you could just send that to Diane Jenkins, that'd be great.
I will.
And then she'll formally update the policy. She keeps strike through and underline language, and then we'll update the website.
Thank you. Director Bleasner, your hand went up immediately.
I do, thank you. I'd just like to actually follow up on a piece that Director Sage had mentioned. I just think it's a little easier to do right now after OE10. We've spoken to, and I think she was bringing it up in regards to the overall value policies and being able to look at that component. And I think that's probably something we do want to consider. And I don't want to get that lost anywhere. So I guess that's why I wanted to make sure to bring it here. And the idea being that each of our policies actually have a value statement at the top for the board to be just a little more clear. Also in regards, I think this is the first step in regards to equity and working with that in this one component. We have worked on an equity policy a few years back. We had both a board level as well as administrative, and we haven't finalized those out. And I would like to propose, and this might not be the place, so it might be discussion for a future agenda, and I apologize, I know I'm a little out of order, is that we actually put that onto the work plan for the board, that we will take that forward. We spoke about linkages and really trying to work through some of that next year and do that. And then I think we really need to commit to an equity policy in working with our equity team at the district level, with our equity, with our students and our family and our community, and really walk that through. So I just wanted to make sure to put that out there, and I didn't want to lose it.
So,
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Bleasner. And while this is not technically the agenda item right now, I do actually think this would be an appropriate time for if any other board members want to comment on what Director Bleasner just brought forward. And I think it would be a good idea for us to at least talk about whether we want to, this is something we should think about putting on our work plan. And the idea of specifically the idea of developing an equity policy and finalizing it. Director Carlson.
Oh, Mark was first.
Okay, sorry. Thank you. Director Stewart.
No big deal. I've been second a lot of times. I agree totally with Director Bleasner. I think that we need to, the more specific we are, the more almost blatant, if you will, about how we actually feel, the less question there is about our intent and our actual values. And I think the more we state it, whether it's redundant at some point in life, so be it. You can never say a good thing too often. And so I agree with Director Bleasner.
Director Carlson and then Dr. Holman.
So I believe it or not, Director Bleasner, I think it's a good idea. My sole concern here is that when we get to something like our agenda meetings, we have so very much of very high importance going on right now that I want to make sure it's a very explicit and finite time within that's devoted to this, because it can metastasize, and I don't want to spend time talking about what we think instead of talking about what we need to do.
Listen, learn, act.
Yes, I'm in favor of acting. So,
Dr. Holman.
So I know it's not typical for coherent governance boards to adopt equity policies. I know it's been done before, and so I guess I would propose to bring kind of a state of the district in regards to the equity policies to either our next meeting or maybe the first meeting in August, just to give the board an idea. It'll take me some time to dig up the board policy. I know I have it somewhere, but that was probably 3 years ago that we were discussing that, and then we went on the administrative policy track. That would give me some time to connect with Gloria as well. She was working on the administrative policy last year, had been doing some engagement, was about to do some further community engagement when COVID shut us all down, and so that work didn't occur. And so it might just be an agenda item for me to provide an update, and then for the board to give me some direction around work plan and kind of how much time the board wants to spend on this. Do you want me to take some time and draft a recommendation around a policy versus starting from scratch? So that would help me to know the direction we want to go. But to be honest with you, I really agree with the board adopting an equity policy, even though equity in its purest form should be embedded in everything we do. I think it's also important for the board to be able to say, here are the different places we are monitoring the organization, because it's a specific value of ours that we are actually taking steps to having a more inclusive, safe, equitable experience for each student.
Director Belize, I guess your hand has been up. I don't know if it, okay, no, okay. Director Carlson and then Director Sage.
Good grief, mine's not up either.
Okay.
Mine's
Director
up.
Sage. Okay.
I just want to hope it goes without saying that in order to work on equity policy, we need community linkage. We need to hear from people and students and their experiences. We need to go to the source, not ask the source to come to us.
Agreed. Okay.
Agreed.
I'll just summarize what I've heard from the board, and that was there was interest in developing a board equity policy, and also when Dr. Holman was talking about providing an update to the board at either the next meeting or the meeting in August, as to the status of the board's equity policy to date in the districts. I saw a lot of I think I saw unanimous head nodding. So I will work with Dr. Holman, and we will bring that to the board as soon as possible. Is my, before we move to the next agenda item, is my screen sharing turned off?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. All right, well so we'll move to the next agenda item. Thank you everyone for the pretty robust conversation we had around this. I know it's hard doing, it's hard having these kind of conversations remotely, and everyone was, I think it went pretty well. I think everyone was professional, and we were able to have a very clear conversation on a difficult topic. The next item on the agenda is an update to fall planning for reopening schools. This is the last item on the non-consent agenda for tonight. Dr. Holman.
Great, thank you. And as you all know, you received public comment tonight around this task. I know we're receiving emails around the concept of reopening schools in the fall. There's many different opinions and ideas, and they all are sourced with the same interest in assuring that our students have a positive, meaningful educational experience. And so with that, our Return to School Task Force is actively working daily on this task, and we continue to receive updates from OSPI, Public Health, the Governor's Office. We see the data around incidents of COVID in our community. So these are all things that we are paying attention to, and we know we have about 6 weeks to complete this task. We also know that students having direct interaction with their teachers is the optimal learning environment. And so we continue to keep that in mind, because we know when our great teachers get in front of our great kids, that's when great things happen. And so tonight we want to talk about two specific things. One, we're going to talk about the decision making and some data around our hybrid model. We are prepared later this week to share with the community a final decision around our model. Associate Superintendent Mike Van Orten is going to share that information with you. Some data from a survey that we did both with parents and with staff, and also Associate Superintendent Van Orten is going to share an update around 3 of our specific programs that we're actively working and planning around. That is special education, our EL, our English Learner Program, and our Highly Capable Program. So with that, I will hand it over to Mike.
Thanks. So as Dr. Holman mentioned, we're about 6 weeks out, and as short a time as that is to make changes like we're preparing for, as you all know, the conditions in our world are changing even more rapidly. If you've been following the news, you probably heard the American Academy of Pediatrics came out with some guidelines about putting kids back in school. And then we started seeing spikes across the country, and they backed off on that to some extent, saying, you have to look locally and look at the conditions that you have. If you've been following California at all, they started opening up, and now they're closing back down. And just today, 2 of the larger districts, not only in California, but in the country, San Diego and Los Angeles, announced that they will be starting school fully remote. And again, that these things are all happening on a scale of weeks and sometimes even days. So really right now, it's in our best interest. Again, even though it's only 6 weeks, knowing how quickly things are changing, it's really in our best interest to have multiple contingencies. And then as we get closer to that first day of school, being able to put in place the contingency, the hybrid model or the remote model that matches most closely with the conditions in our region, direction from OSPI and the governor's office. So what we're going to share with you tonight is really planning that's occurred around that hybrid model, which is based on the latest guidance we've been receiving from OSPI about how we should open, knowing that things can change in a matter of weeks and we may need to be looking at some different options as well. So I'm going to walk you through that, and then as Dr. Holman mentioned, we'll give you some brief updates as well on some of our programs. Okay, so I just want to confirm, can everybody see that okay?
Yes.
Okay, and then I just opened up something else
Got it.
that's not blocking it.
Got it.
Okay, let's try that. Okay.
You're good.
So as we mentioned earlier, and I just wanted to give you a brief overview, really we are following some principles that Dr. Holman was mentioning. One is we need to make sure that we're protecting the health and safety of our students and our staff and our families. And so any work that we're doing needs to mitigate and minimize the spread of coronavirus. And we're getting guidance from the Department of Health. And again, we're adjusting based on what we get at any given time. I think World Health Organization is looking at different requirements. We're seeing different things across the nation. But right now, really, we have some specific guidance about social distancing that we're following. We also are and have been receiving guidance about making sure that students have an opportunity to engage in learning. So safety is number one priority. Making sure students are learning is a close second. And we have to make sure that we're building on improving what we had in the spring, engaging our families, because more than ever, they're always important partners, but now they're actually at home with their kids often in an educational role. And so we need to make sure we're engaging families. And as we were having the conversation tonight, we need to be very intentional about how we're addressing inequities related to race, ability, socioeconomic status, language, all of these things that have been always there in our schools, but have been exacerbated by the pandemic. So again, as we have our different groups working, these are principles that we're making sure we're following. Also, just as a reminder, this is the latest OSPI guidance. And again, by latest, I mean, a few weeks, and it could, again, change as we get more information. But right now, there's an emphasis on operating with face-to-face instruction and following Department of Health guidelines. And really specifically, we'll talk about in a moment, that's that 6-foot separation, social distancing, cleaning, protocols that keep kids and staff safe. We also are still held to our hour and day requirements. And we need to make sure that we're prepared to go to a fully remote if conditions change. And again, as we're looking across the country, we're seeing that that's an increasing likelihood. We're also will be required to take daily attendance. So again, some of these are reviewed from our last time. The big drivers right now as we plan for the possibility of having students back in our schools is we do need to make sure that there's physical space to have social distancing. And so right now that's allowing us to have about 16 to 20 students in a classroom if we spread desks apart. And that will also include things like making sure our hallways are trafficked in a way that we reduce contact, we reduce opportunities for folks to gather in large groups. We think about programs that have higher likelihoods of spreading the virus, like music and physical education, transferring students from place to place. So all of these things are factors we're needing to consider as we're planning for how do we return to school. Now, if we are fully remote, we're not necessarily thinking about these things, but if we are planning on having students back in person, we do need to make sure we have plans for each of these. So as I shared last week or a few weeks back, there are really 3 ways that we could return. One would be fully in person, and again, just looking at how things are progressing, that's a ways off. We have the hybrid model, which we'll share more details on tonight. And then the other one that will be there as an option for families, even if we are in the hybrid, and also very likely that we would, as a whole district, be in a remote environment only. And so, again, we're preparing specifically plans for this hybrid model as well as the remote model so that if and when we get to that date, and we're given guidance that says you have to be fully remote, we're ready to go with that. Or if we're given guidance that said, nope, you can have kids come in, things are looking okay, then we can implement the hybrid model. So we need to have a number of different ways that we can return so that we are prepared on that first day back and even through the school year. So just at a high level, to share some of the key elements of the hybrid model, the idea right now is that students would be in person 2 days a week and online 3 days a week. And the idea there is that we're reducing by half the number of students that are in school or in a given classroom on any given day. Right now, that would most likely be divided by alphabet. And as you can imagine, where that place in the alphabet can vary by school to get half the number of students, and even by district. And so we're really working on how do we identify a way to get students in a school about half the numbers they currently are and have that all divided by classes. Also, we're working on how to make sure we keep siblings together so they're on the same schedule. So once we've done that, then we can more effectively social distance. Then when we have students with us, we want to make sure we're focusing on those things that are really important to focus on when we have students with us. And those are things like, building those relationships with students, introducing course content and skills, direct discussion, hands-on learning, those science experiments, things like that, and other approaches that really lend themselves to in-person learning because it's such a precious commodity right now. Then when students are at home, the approach will most likely be more on asynchronous, where students are working independently on assignments that were introduced in class. We're also looking at, are there ways to have some of our specialists, like our music and PE and some of our services that are delivered on those days remotely, but in smaller groups or in classes that students can access in a live way, but online. We, in addition, are thinking about how do students get a hold of their teachers if they're only in person 2 days a week and the teacher's with a class 2 days of the week. How do students have opportunities to connect with their teachers, whether it's through email or video conferencing or things like that? And as you all know, there's a high interest in how are we delivering the range of services and supports to students who need those for any number of reasons, whether it's ability, language. We want to make sure that there are those supports still in place. And so we're thinking about how do you deliver small group instruction both in person and remote. All of those, again, are really dependent on King County health guidelines. And so depending on how we return to school, we'll have to adjust each of these things. The fully remote model, whether that's by choice, and we're making that choice available to all of our families, and that is all the way through 12th grade. So I think there were some questions about the primary grades and the students who are back full time, but we want to make sure that families do know. We know that there'll be students and families who have health conditions that would say, even if you're in kindergarten, you can still choose the fully remote model. And there's a very high likelihood that we will be in the fully remote model for some portions of next year. So in this model, students are participating in online learning each day of the week. It needs to be, as you know, a much more enhanced version of what took place in the spring. And because we've had more time to prepare, that expectation is not unreasonable. We also want to make sure that we are providing live instruction and instruction that can be accessed by video so that students can actually see their teacher's face. They can have interactions with their teachers, but also make sure that there's that flexibility. As challenging as it was to not have live instruction, having opportunities to have some flexibility was also something we heard was helpful. And so asynchronous can help with that as well. We're developing guidelines to talk about what would be the expectations for high quality instruction and have clear expectations for the completion of work and assessments, and thinking about, again, how we're delivering those services. So again, having those models mapped out and ready to go on that first day of school will allow us to be able to not only be prepared for whatever the conditions are when we open in the fall, but also if things change during the school year, we can easily move back and forth between those. So as you have seen, as we shared last week, there really are two ways of thinking about the hybrid model. One is where we have alternating groups each day. So one group, half the students are in person, and then the next day, the other half of the students come, and they alternate through. And then in addition, there'll be one day that will be set aside for small group instruction, some of our services that can be delivered. Also, we're looking at as an opportunity for planning and preparation and professional learning on that day. And so again, that could be potentially a Wednesday or a Friday option, and we're still working through some of that. The other option is looking at putting the students in their cohort groups together in consecutive days, and then they would have the next group coming in the following 2 days. And again, you could break that up with a middle of the week day or a Friday day. So really, those are the two models that we think are most viable at this point. What they do, the main driver there is they allow us to create small enough classes where we can socially distance. Now, as you also know, we have our pre-K through first grade. we believe we can have class sizes low enough there across the board that we can have students far enough apart in those grades. But as you start moving into second and third grade, our class sizes do get higher. And so we just don't have the teaching staff or the space to go beyond K1. And so our K1, PK1 students will be in person each day of the week, and then our other students are on this alternating schedule. So as you know, we also asked families and staff, as Dr. Holman mentioned, to weigh in on these. And so what I'm going to share next is the results as of this morning, just in terms of preference. But I also need to preface this by saying that's one piece of data that we're looking at. We're looking at preferences of our community, but we're also looking at other things like our ability to clean. We're looking at how do we make sure we're ensuring safety, and how do we make sure that we can provide really sound instruction. So all of those factors are coming together to help us make a decision about which of the hybrid models makes most sense. But in terms of the specific feedback we got from families and staff, as we asked our families, what preference do you have? The majority there was for the consecutive days. And our sense is that's partly for a daycare issue. Having consecutive days is probably easier to manage from a daycare perspective. It also allows students to have continuous time with their teachers, and then they have a time where they can actually do work for the rest of the week. Now, again, you can see there are quite a few folks that also say the alternating would be helpful. And again, from an educational perspective, having those days where you have a day with your teacher and then a day to work and then a day to come back with your teacher does allow for a cycle of instruction. And so, again, we have to weigh all those factors. As we asked our staff, not quite as much a majority, but still slightly more the consecutive in-person as well. So those would be those, the A group is together Monday, Tuesday, and then you have the B group either on Wednesday, Thursday, or Thursday, Friday. You can also see there were a number of folks that didn't have a strong preference. So that was the first question we asked. The next question we asked is which day would make most sense to you? If you could have the all remote where all students are out. And from there we saw the large majority for families were saying Friday. And I think, again, that was to keep that weekend long. And then from our staff, again, not quite as much, but still more folks that were saying on Friday. And then the last thing we asked was, how interested would you be in a full remote? And I need to share on this part that we really are thinking we just needed to get a temperature check early so we can start planning. This week on Friday, our plan is to open up enrollment for a full remote that we'll actually be getting actual data on families that are expecting to come in full remote. We're also going to do the same for our staff. But just from this initial temperature check, we saw that, again, the majority of our families were saying that they are leaning to no for a full remote, which means they want their students back in school, even with a hybrid model. And there were some that were saying yes. So if you say 2,800 here, right now that's about 10% roughly, but again, we had about half the number of people respond to the survey as we have families in the district. And we also know that the families will need much more information to make a decision. And so again, this just gives us kind of a ballpark. We'll get much better data when we ask folks to actually enroll in full-time or remote, or a hybrid or remote. When we asked our staff, I think this is the more interesting piece of data. Whereas before with families, it was much larger percentage that said they want to come back. If we look at our staff, about 50% are saying, you know what, I might be more interested in teaching remotely than being in person. And so that's going to be an interesting challenge as we think about how do we match up staff who need to be remote because of risk factors or potentially want to be remote, and the number of students that want to be in person. And so that's going to be our next step, is to get all of that data to line those up. The other thing I'm going to share with you is this is a high-level overview of just kind of the decision, but underneath this, there is lots of work that needs to be happening. And I just bring this in as an example to share with you. Tim Krieger put this together. Once we make the decision about hybrid, which model we're going to use, and we communicate that, then families can start signing up for a full remote option or a hybrid option. But even after that, we need to go back and find those dividing lines to make sure that we have roughly equal numbers of students in the A and B group by school. We have siblings matched. As you can imagine, just think about the impact of this on high schools when they've already created schedules and students are already enrolled in classes, and then we take half the kids out. Well, ideally half the kids come out in each class, but as you can imagine, not every class, if you go down to a class level, divides equally by alpha. And so we'll have some classes that are sitting with maybe 5 kids in after we divide the school in half that will need to be rebalanced. We'll also need to be making sure that, as we mentioned before, we're matching up staff with students. So there's lots of work that has to happen over the next 4 to 6 weeks that really are dependent on a decision about the hybrid model and getting families enrolled, and then starting that work to get all of those next steps accomplished before we open up school. So in terms of timeline, as Dr. Holman mentioned, we continue to have planning teams that are working on all sorts of different factors, from safety and health to instruction, operations, childcare, all of these things. And many of these are very much dependent on the model that we choose and the way in which we return to school. And so our goal is by the end of this week, and ideally Thursday, we'll have a decision about which hybrid model that we're planning on using. Right now, it's looking like the consecutive days is the option that seems to be the most viable to us. And we're still kind of working on whether that Wednesday or Friday makes sense. The Wednesday really has a lot of value in terms of ability to potentially clean if we have a case in a school, or to give us some time if we do need to close a classroom or a school to communicate to families. So we're still kind of working through that Wednesday, Friday. But again, the goal would be to have that by Thursday. And then we are also working with our Lake Washington Education Association on a whole number of issues related to how teachers come to school. And we need to get, again, that full remote or hybrid model kind of all put together so that we can start mapping out the implications of the different decisions we're making. Then in August, we want to be able to communicate to families where their kids are, what classes are available to them, who their teacher is, things like that. We'll continue to plan all the way up to the first day of school. And then mid-August, we are planning on a pretty robust training for our staff on everything from safety and health to curriculum, assessment, our digital platform, and equity training as well. So that in September, regardless of the direction we get from OSPI and Department of Health, we are ready to go. So that's kind of an update on the planning process for the model. I wonder if, do you want me to take a few minutes to answer questions on that before we go into programs, or would you prefer I go into the programs, program updates?
I saw Director Stewart's hand first. And then Director Carlson.
Mike, I appreciate, okay. Mike, I appreciate all the work you put into this, and maybe this is coming up later in the presentation, so if it is, ignore me and just tell me go away for a while. Do we have an idea yet how many staff, and when I say staff, not only, I mean teaching staff, paras, IAs, and the rest, and all the other teams that go into it, but in particular those that are directly involved almost face-to-face with students, if you will, so that teachers, the paras, the IAs, do we know how many are age 65 or over or have compromised immune systems that they would not be able really to, the high risk for them would be damned high, to be quite frank. No one wants to lose teachers. No one wants to lose students. And would also need to know from the students how many of them are in the high risk area regarding immunity. Do we have numbers on that yet?
Yeah, so that's something we're going to be doing on Friday, as well as we'll be asking each staff member to indicate if they're in a risk group. We're not, I think maybe Joy can chime in on this as well. I don't believe we're asking what the actual risk factor is, but are you in a high risk group? Then we'll also ask about preference, and that's for every staff member you were mentioning, Mark. And then that can be used to then start lining up folks to fully remote, or, again, I think we'll have a number of people that would just say, I may not fall in the risk groups, but I'm just concerned about my own safety, and so I would prefer to teach fully remote if I can. So we'll be gathering all of that data over the next week, concurrently with the information we're getting about families.
It would seem that we could gather that kind of information about students from those that have health plans registered with each school, and we don't need to know names, we just need to know numbers.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think Joy was about to chime in. I saw her mic briefly.
Thank you. I was going to say, yes, that is correct. We will be sending out a survey this week, giving staff the opportunity to identify whether or not they fall in a high-risk category, and then look to support them depending on what their needs are, and also getting some preferences. So we're still at the early stages of gathering that data, and that'll be going out this week.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Director Carlson, have you next.
Thanks. So, Mike, I just want to congratulate you and your team. This is complicated work, and there is no way that anybody is ever going to be happy, which means that you're doing a fine job of trying to thread the needle on balancing all the competing needs here. There is no question that having the kids back in the classroom full-time would be absolutely lovely on a social level, but socially it's not that valuable if we're turned into a hub for spreading disease in our own communities. So I appreciate you're trying to find systems where we can flip the switch and define the criteria for when we would flip the switch between full remote, hybrid, and fully in person. My other thought was, so that's a broad, keep going, you're doing the right stuff, thank you. One of the things you mentioned was the notion of sort of having an alphabetical split, and I think that as far as an arbitrary thing goes, that's about as fair as you're going to get. The immediate concern for me is that the alphabetical split within a school is going to be very different than the alphabetical split within one classroom. So at least at the elementary level, it makes a lot of sense that you should be doing it alphabetically by classroom. And the second dimension to that is, trying to do it alphabetically, assuming all the children in the same household have the same last name is great. That isn't a guarantee, and it definitely makes sense to try and cluster kids by household so that the entire household's on the same schedule. Not only does it keep them exposed to the same subset of kids, but it just makes it easier on parents to communicate, to transport kids. So, yeah. But I'm sure you guys that's the sort of nitty gritty that thankfully you don't go into on every piece of this plan. It's just one that I see as very important very early on to get on top of. So thanks.
Okay. Director Stewart, did you have something else to add?
Yes, I did. Thank you. Mike, were you going to go in a few minutes to special needs and ELL, or is this the time to ask a question for, because I seem to recall you saying that they were in the same category as K1 of the idea of being in every day, but I want to make sure that I'm not misremembering.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that next. I was going to do a program update on special education EL and accelerated programs.
That'll be later tonight?
Yeah, just in the next few minutes here. I thought this might be a good place to pause on the hybrid.
I'm pretty sure it's your next slide.
Yeah.
Mike, just one quick thing, and then I will continue on because I don't see any other hands from board members. I appreciate that the focus of the presentation tonight and a lot of the work we're doing is on students and what is best for students and learning, and not necessarily on the logistics side. It's what is best for students, and then how do we make that work as best we can. And I can tell that is the guiding principle as part of this. And I just, when we get to the decision point, I just really hope that remains the case. So, and then I'll let you continue with your presentation.
Okay. So as I mentioned, we wanted to just give you a quick update on our different programs. Because again, the way we provide services when we're in school is very different in this new set of conditions. And so, for example, our English Learner program, we have staff that are dedicated to providing direct services to students, as well as providing support for our teachers. And like everything else, we're getting guidance from the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction about what the expectations are, what we should be doing, what recommendations are. And as soon as we get that, teams begin to work through and dig through that guidance to think about how does it apply in our conditions. So we are looking at guidance around effective practice for English learners and how do you do that in a remote setting, in an in-person setting. We're thinking about family and community partnerships and even just post-high school planning. So Kelly Pease right now is working with her teams to identify models, curriculum tools, schedules for students that will allow them to do both synchronous, actual live teaching, and asynchronous, where videos are available that students can access at any time. One of the things, and again, as you start to dig into this planning, you start to recognize the complexities that we were talking about earlier. If we have, for example, English learner teachers that are going from classroom to classroom, and we're doing a really good job of keeping classrooms somewhat isolated and distanced. Now we've introduced a person that's going around and potentially spreading a virus. And so we're thinking about how might we deliver direct supports to students in our EL program, but actually with a device. And that could even be in a classroom where a student is sitting with another student or a couple of students together, and then they're working with the teacher remotely in a classroom setting, because we have to be careful about staff and student safety. And that's one of the ways we may actually be working in a counterproductive way. We're also working with our families, and Kelly Pease is doing a really amazing job, not only in the EL program, but just elementary across the board, of making sure we're starting to reach out and engage our families about what their needs are. And as we have models that we can share with them, then we can ask the question, will this do it? What would you need to make this work? So as I mentioned before, OSPI is working around the clock to give guidance as well. We are expecting some guidance from OSPI, specifically around assessing our potential learners. And again, assessment becomes a challenge when you can't do it in person. And particularly in our EL program, the number of students that we test annually is significant. And so we're looking to guidance from that. But again, as I mentioned, Kelly Pease is also preparing lots of contingencies in advance so that when we do get the guidance, we're not having to start at the ground floor. As we look to special education, we have received guidance from Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction. As with our opening guidance, it outlines as best it can a broad set of principles, and then we start to receive Q&A and update guidance that are coming along with the guidance as well. And so again, we're taking what we have and using that. Right now, really, there is a lot of emphasis on having schools and districts figuring out what will work best at a local level. And so that will mean things like, as Mark was mentioning, how do we do in-person services? Well, with in-person services comes things like transportation, and we want to make sure that we're safely transporting kids to school and not, again, increasing the risk of exposure. It means things like, how do we do in-person services for students who have greater needs? And as you know, we do everything for students, particularly students with pretty significant disabilities, everything from diapering to close physical proximity to helping students kind of manage themselves in group situations. And so we need to make sure that we're providing really high quality special education services and keeping our students and staff safe. Again, as Mark was mentioning as well, we have a number of staff that provide supports for our kids, and particularly our students with the most significant disabilities are often in classes with large numbers of adults relative to other classes. Well, if many of those adults are in high-risk categories and aren't able to provide in-person services, we're having to rethink our entire staffing model. So we are looking to try to make some ways to bring students back in greater numbers, particularly in our programs. Because our student counts are so low there, social distancing might be more possible. But again, we need to make sure we have staff members who can be in person. We need to make sure we can actually provide the services in the right way. We need to make sure we can do it safely. So right now we're exploring the option of, for our programs, which would be our intervention centers, our transition centers, that we would have potentially 4 days a week of in-person and then 1 day of kind of that fully remote. Now, again, that's all dependent on whether we can do that safely and have the staff to do it and have the space to do it. But that's what we're working towards and managing right now. In addition, we're working with the Lake Washington Education Association very specifically on all the different folks who work with kids in our special education program, and how do you provide services in a way that, again, protects student safety and adult safety. And so that's ongoing work that's happening right now with a pretty focused group that's been meeting over the past few weeks and will continue to meet. And then finally, we're looking at our paraeducators and different ways that paraeducators can provide supports for students. And again, ideally in person, but also what does it look like if it needs to be remote? And we did hear a high interest on the part of folks across our district, not only our staff, but our families of, and even our paraeducators. How can we really kind of do the right work, and were we doing enough, and were there some opportunities that maybe we missed last year because we didn't have enough planning time? And so I'm really trying to figure out what's the best way for paraeducators to do the work that they want to do and we're signed up to do, but in a safe way. And then finally, our highly capable program. Similar there, we're working to provide services for all students. This will include things, including our full-time quest, our pull-out, and our highly capable. For our full-time quest, we're looking at things like how do we divide up those classes that are combination of grade levels 2 and 3, and is that a great place to maybe do that split there, of have the second graders be the A group and the third graders be the B group, for example. Again, you have to look at siblings and a whole bunch of things there, but that's one of the areas we're looking at. In addition, when we have students that are pulled out and going to different places, we're worried about spreading the virus. And so we're trying to think about how can kids get services maybe pushed into them remotely, even if they're in a classroom with a highly capable teacher. So again, lots of details to figure out there. We're also looking at how we can align and adjust our curriculum. There's some really wonderful new online resources that are very specific to highly capable students that we're going to be piloting, that we could potentially make available to all of our students next year for when they're fully remote. And again, just looking at how do we assign kids, what are the days that they're remote on, how do we make sure that we keep our students engaged, how do we make sure the curriculum is really meeting their needs, whether they're in person or remote. So each of these groups has planning teams that includes staff members, includes principals, includes central office members who are all developing models. And then as they get ready to kind of say, we've got something good, they make recommendations, and we're moving on things as quickly as possible with the goal, again, of being open for that first day of school. So as I mentioned earlier, we continue to plan to have weekly updates, and as we have decisions about each of these program areas, we'll be making sure to provide information in those weekly updates, but also targeted information directly to families who will be impacted. And so as soon as decisions start to come out on some of these things, we'll be putting direct information to those families so that they know what to expect. So I think that is it officially.
Thank you, Mike. Any questions from board members? Director Carlson?
Sorry, I just want to make sure that I'm clear on your point here for the models for pullout programming, that pullout quest, for example, would be a terrible way of bringing together different networks of kids to transmit disease. As an epidemiologist, it terrifies me. So what you're saying here is that in the hybrid model, the pullout would be offered on the fully remote days. Therefore, you wouldn't have kids from different schools seeing each other in person.
Yeah, or even if it was on an in-person day, the teacher would be piping into the classroom via a device rather than sending kids to a different classroom.
Great. Yeah, okay. The epidemiologist in me is satisfied. Thank you.
Director Stewart?
Yeah, Mike, a quick question. What about the SPED kids who are special needs kids who are already integrated or included into the general ed classes? How would they be, how would that work?
Yeah, so two things there. One is if you're, say, for example, in a resource room support kind of model, that they would be on the same hybrid schedule. And then again there, the question is, can the special education teacher push in remotely? Because again, if the special education teacher is going to every class in the building, there's the potential to spread virus that way. Now, it doesn't mean that they wouldn't necessarily have face-to-face interaction with kids, but potentially it could be small group instruction during a class when everybody's in person, and then the kids are with the teacher actually in real time, but they're on a device. Or some of the services are delivered remotely, or...
No, I'm thinking really of the... Go ahead.
Oh, I would say the other thing is there may be that fully remote day for kids that need some very specific supports that could come in on those fully remote days. And again, so that's something we're also looking at. Like you said, can we map out what the needs of all of our different groups are so that we can say, okay, we'd have 50 kids that would need in-person services, and those could be actually delivered in a relatively safe way on a fully remote day because you'd have 2 or 3 kids in with one teacher.
Right. I wasn't just thinking of the team teaching experimentation that we're doing, but I'm also thinking of the kids that are included in gen ed classes that have a para that accompanies them.
Yep.
As opposed to a teacher. So, okay. Thanks.
One of the things just to say on that, we were just in a national conference with the Council of Chief State School Officers, and our goal is to create inclusive learning communities where kids are educated together. And so we're trying to be really careful about not separating kids out from their peers to the extent possible while keeping them safe. And so that kind of speaks to your point, Mark, is we want to make sure kids are with their peers to the greatest extent possible. And how are we making sure they still get the services they need, whether it's during their class time or on another day, but they don't lose that interaction.
And thank you, Mike. I realize that's a delicate balance. The last part of my question really is the delivery of the speech therapists, the OTs, the PTs, behavior therapists. I can see how speech therapy can work remote because my son is now doing it with his speech therapist, but I'm not sure how you do that in a classroom setting. I mean, a lot of those this last spring, a lot of kids missed a lot of services, not intentionally, but it was one of those things. I know that no one would want to deprive anybody of anything, but it happened. And I think it's because we were thrown into it so quickly. But now that we've had time to really work with it, if we need to really find a way to get those kids those services, because otherwise they're not. No, what's the point of an IEP?
Yeah.
Sorry, Director Bleasner.
Look, I'll even take my hand down because I remembered. So I just have a few questions. You spoke to physical distancing and class size and the whole challenge of how do you do the cohorting and different things. And so my question is, elementary school seems to be a fairly much easier environment in which to do that because kids are in one class. As you deal with high school kids and middle school who are going between classes, physical distancing is just one component of all the mitigating factors that need to be in there for protection, right? So, I'm curious, do we have a limit on class size? Would be one component because the fewer kids, right, the less exposure you have to that. And how are we handling high school and rotating classes?
So again, high school is on the hybrid, so it's half as many students on campus in a given day. But you're right. Then it gets to individual classes. This is what Chris was saying. Is if you go down to the classroom level and you divide by alpha, you can do it at a classroom level. If you do it at a school, you don't have equal classes. So the step would be once we get the data on which kids are remote, we can take those off the hybrid group, right? And that leaves you all the rest of the kids that have signed up for algebra and visual arts and English language arts. Then we have to go in class by class and rebalance the classes. So this is something that we do with secondary master schedules is we look at how many kids have signed up. Then you have to move kids to different periods and you have to make sure that you kind of go through and make sure everything's balanced to the greatest extent possible and adjust your staffing. So that would be the next step to do that. And then you would have classes that would be roughly 15 kids or so that are half as many as they would typically be if all the kids were on campus. In addition, things like, I'm sorry?
Oh, I just wanted, but with that, what about when you keep mixing classes? Because your classes shift. It's a different
Right.
15 people I go to each day.
Yeah, so we were talking about that today as well. It's much easier in the earlier grades when groups of kids take the same classes. So all the ninth graders kind of can go together to their ninth grade classes. It gets much more complex as you get to junior and seniors where they're taking so many different groups. But some schools have looked at kind of a module structure within a school where you have like, remember the old small schools movement from the Microsoft group where you had clusters and they worked in classes together. So you had a group of teachers that taught all the content areas and they had the same group of kids over the course of the day. So Chris Beatty, we were talking today, was saying, once we have the actual numbers of kids that are going to be in our school, then they can start mapping out different ways to isolate. And as you pointed out, it will still be a challenge to do that in a way that keeps kids from mixing with each other over the course of the day. Some things to mitigate during things like passing periods is maybe to stagger some of the bell schedules, to have routines for walking in the halls, to have, again, we're even at the secondary, do we have lunches in classroom spaces? So lots of work still to do there, but until we know how many kids we have, that's kind of the thing we're waiting for, so we can actually map in earnest.
All right. So I guess that's the piece. How do you cohort the kids and the teachers as effectively as possible?
Yes.
Because the fewer exposures in any setting, the less likelihood if something gets in, you have to shut down a lot.
Right. Yep.
Thanks. And that's it. Great work. And just being able to walk through all this. It's hard to be maintaining all the multiple levels that have to go through, and appreciate that.
Director Stewart, your hand went up first, but we have not heard from Director Sage yet. So I'm going to call on her first.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, thanks.
Fine, Dandy.
Thank you. How realistic is block classes? My older kids took, LASS from the same teacher for a 2-hour period.
Right now, I mean, it's one of the options that some schools are looking at, but basically that throws everything back to square one, and we would have to have all students reschedule. We'd also have to have all of our teachers skilled to actually deliver a block class. So right now we are looking at a 7-period. We may be looking at reducing the number of elective options to have electives more in strands. But for now, we are staying with the 7-period model. Now, it doesn't mean we might not need to change that, but just to be able to do all the things we've just been talking about and move everybody to a completely different way of teaching on a block schedule, we're thinking that we may not have enough time.
It's an incomprehensible job that you're doing right now. You mentioned that we might have to reduce elective offerings. I have heard from the community that students are actually, some students are interested in changing their electives, given that now best case scenario may be a hybrid for them. What is your thought on that?
So that may be driven by what we can offer. So again, those single elective classes with 20 students, and then all of a sudden half of them are fully remote, we wouldn't be able to offer. At the same time, that teacher is certificated or certified to teach, a range of options. And so we might say, well, what's the class that most kids would take? And we would assign that teacher to it. So again, it's probably going to be electives more in strands, like visual arts electives, rather than the whole range of all the different types of visual arts. Or it might be the CTE options, but it might be fewer CTE options. So again, it really is going to depend on which kids go fully remote, which kids stay in person, which teachers need to be fully remote, which teachers need to be fully in person, and then matching those up and then seeing where we can, again, maybe consolidate some of our electives. The other courses like English language arts, math, those are graduation requirements, so we need to make sure those are offered. And so that'll be a first priority.
I lost my train of thought, sorry. With students that, say you do offer some electives, but they would prefer to have their core curriculum at school and maybe do an elective in another fashion. Are you thinking you'll be able to be flexible enough to accommodate that?
Again, it's really going to depend on where we have teachers and what delivery model they're in. So having teachers deliver in-person learning is very staff intensive, because they have to develop really good high quality lessons for when their students are in place, and then also have things for their students to do when they're remote. So to say, yeah, and then we also need you to teach this other elective class, that probably isn't an option for that group. Then we'll have a group of teachers that are fully remote for a number of reasons, whether it's they're in a risk group or they want to be fully remote, but do they have the right certificate to offer those classes that students want to take? So it really is going to be kind of fitting all those pieces of the puzzle together, and where we can offer choice and flexibility, we will, but we may also be limited by certification, availability of staff, the model that students and staff are choosing.
As far as you're just getting an idea at the end of this week on who might want to be remote.
Actually,
are you asking people to commit?
Yeah, so our plan would be Friday of this week to ask families to commit to fully remote or hybrid, and then that would be open through July 31st. Staff would be doing the same thing. We're seeing most other districts are doing that as well, with some caveats. If you're fully remote, here's what you can expect. If you're in a hybrid model, here's what you can expect. Even in a hybrid model, we might be coming back to fully remote, so be prepared for that. And then families can make an informed decision. So there would be a 2-week window, and then we could actually start doing all those things I mentioned, balancing classes, assigning staff. There still would be, I think most districts that have done this model still have some flexibility for a family who moves in or needs to make an adjustment, but we are going to ask, for the most part, once you've made your decision, to stick with that decision, so that we can actually offer services to folks. Because if we're constantly having to adjust, we will never be able to do anything for everybody.
So it would be clear to families who choose remote that it was for a certain period of time that they needed to be remote. Are we rethinking that at the semester, or
I
would
think
have to be for the
right
entire
now
year?
we're looking at probably the full year. Now, again, if you look at California, the way they just went, Los Angeles and San Diego are doing full remote for everybody for a semester. So if we got that to that point, then again, we would probably revisit whether you go hybrid or fully remote at the second semester, if that's where we are as a state. So there may be flexibility just given the circumstances that we find ourselves in when we open. But for right now, our thinking is we'd ask folks to commit, just because, again, all of those things I just mentioned, how do you line everybody up to do that on a regular rotating basis? We just don't have the ability to do. And so then students aren't getting what they need because we're trying to match all these different variables.
Thank you.
Director Stewart, thank you for waiting.
Yeah, Mike, a quick question for y'all. I'm concerned about the equity aspects of this, and I'm sure you're factoring it in. But for those families with both parents with jobs that cannot work remotely, it's going to have an impact on the families of some families of color, but a lot of families of economic need. How are we going? Is there a mechanism that we've tried to look at for those families that just absolutely they don't have a choice? They got to send the kids in. There's no one where to put them.
Yeah, one of the things we're looking at is daycare options for families, and that would include our staff's families, our students, as well as our families, trying to have daycare option on each site. Again, it's and again, some districts are looking at a phased-in approach, and I don't want to completely take that off the table. That you have some students come back early, but to sustain something for an entire year and have the staff to do it again, it's going to see if we fit all those pieces together. So our approach really right now is thinking about how do we make sure that kids are getting a great education, that we're supporting families, and that ideally that daycare can pick up some of that slack you're talking about, Mark. Because really if you think about it, the one drawback to fully remote is daycare. I mean, that's the bottom line. You have working families, and if we could solve that problem, then fully remote makes so much sense in terms of being able to provide good instruction. But because our staff is on the same boat. I mean, I also want to acknowledge our teachers have kids at home too. And so we've been in meetings even this summer where a member of our committee has a child that's kind of running around the house and they're needing to attend to. And so that's one of the biggest challenges right now.
Yeah. Are we looking at structural separations? I know several news stories. I'm sorry, am I cutting in on you?
Oh, no, I can hear
you. Okay. The idea of plexiglass around desks. I've seen in one school out of the country where they're taking what had been voter booths, if you will, where folks would go in to file their votes. They've reconstructed them to fit desks. We're looking at anything along those lines?
I think maybe Matt Matt can talk to that, or the safety group can talk to it. One of the things we're hearing, and actually Chris could probably speak to it too, is the plexiglass, just given that we're hearing that the virus may be aerosolized, the plexiglass in a classroom setting may not actually prohibit the spread of the virus. But Matt, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add on that, or Chris?
I'm just,
Well, the masks, at the end of the day, the face shields, they're a very temporary thing, and they work in the medical context of you've got to get in somewhere fast, and you're just trying to prevent spatter from hitting you in the face. It doesn't change your personal aerosol getting out into the room or you breathing in the air that is in the room that's already been aerosolized.
Yeah.
So it ain't, we all want it to be, but we haven't found a right answer.
Well, no, the things I've seen was not a matter of replacing the mask, but it was in addition to the mask, to get another barrier, you had plexiglass around the desks.
Yeah, and that's something
that's a very expensive, very expensive method, but if it works, it works.
Yeah, it's we're all going to have to figure out a lot of things as we go. At this point, aside from the plexiglass you're seeing between you and the cashier at Safeway, or you and the person at DMV, those where you can sort of divide the room into two airspaces, the cashier's side and everybody else's side, that works great. But if it's really just, okay, I've somehow got to make this 6 square feet work for student A and that 6 square feet work for student B, that's a level of cubicle compartmentalization that I haven't seen anything that looks viable yet. I want to,
Okay.
I just haven't seen anything.
Thought, right, because I keep seeing things. I'll patch any of the articles I see.
Okay, Dr. Holman, you popped up. Do you want to, I think that's it from the board. Do you want to bring us home? Thank you, Mike. Also.
Thank you, Mike. That was great. Very informative. At our July 27 meeting, we'll be bringing reports from our Return to School Task Force, specifically related to 3 different areas. Number 1 is childcare. Associate Superintendent Barbara Posthumus is doing some initial work around that right now. We heard public comment tonight about that. We just had a discussion about that. We know that childcare is an issue that's forefront in our community's mind and our staff's mind right now, and so we're doing some work around that. So we'll be able to bring an update around that, probably on a decision point yet at the July 27 meeting. Also, technology and information services, technology operations, technology integration, and data research and accountability. The level of work that team is doing behind the scenes to help ensure that things get put in place is tremendous, and we want to bring an update in regards to their work that they're doing with devices, with preparing the organization for instruction, and some of our work around data, of which you hear woven into the entire conversation. And then we also want to bring an update around mental health supports, either where we're at for opening the year, or an update around things we're thinking about in preparation for the upcoming school year. So with that, that concludes our update on fall planning.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is a superintendent report. Dr. Holman, do you have anything to report tonight?
I have a brief superintendent report tonight, being that this is my first official board meeting as superintendent. I wanted to just take a quick trip down memory lane. I believe next school year is my 22nd school year in Lake Washington School District, and when my first day on July 1, I sent a message out to our district leadership team, just singing their praises, thanking them for their efforts, and again, providing context for our work. Our work is about our students, our work is about our mission and vision, and our work is about ensuring that our system is supporting all students. And so in response to that email, I got an email back from the principal at Benjamin Rush Elementary, and she included a picture in that I wanted to share with the board to kind of highlight my why. And this obviously is a picture from a couple of years ago, and this was actually my first class of 3rd graders. And it's so interesting how often I've reflected back on this group of young people and the lessons we all learned together about what does it take to have a high-functioning classroom where everyone feels included and welcomed. And there are kids from every background in this picture. And as a new teacher, I remember my first day wondering if I was prepared to support the learning of a group of students. And by the end of that year, I realized that it isn't me who needs to be prepared, but it's us as a group that needed to be prepared to support one another. And I bring this into the board meeting tonight because I think every discussion we have, whether it's policy, whether it's budget, whether it's issues related to equity, it always needs to go back to our students and the experience that they have in our school district and the experiences they have as they move into their life post-high school. And so this is a picture that I have treasured for many years because the lessons I learned from this group of students was pretty amazing. And it's amazing 21 years later to look at this picture and remember each of them by name, and to have multiple stories about each of their journey as young people, as learners, and a number of them send me updates every once in a while as to their journey. And so I wanted to again thank the board for hiring me as your next superintendent, and to also remind all of us that the reason we are here are these wonderful young people that we get to serve each and every day. And that's my first superintendent's report.
Excellent. I hope that we get old pictures of you in every superintendent report that follows as well. Yeah, thank you.
I'll see about that.
Okay. The next item on our agenda tonight, the last item on our agenda tonight, is board comments. And do any board members have any comments or items for follow-up? Director Stewart, I saw your hand go up first. You may be on mute. I'm not able to hear you.
We'll try again. Okay, technology is wonderful. As I've said very explicitly in the past, Mike Van Orden's, Matt's, Sally's teams have been extraordinary. And all the other teams involved too, but they seem to be on the front line here, trying to wrap all the technology and learning into one. However, I've been working in crisis communications for most of my career, and I've learned that you need to look at this for the long haul. And while we're marshaling all of our resources for a hybrid model, and the model is coming up for just this year, I think we might want to consider designating or creating, if you will, a department or director of remote learning, so that we have a continuity after this year and for the years to come. God forbid we have another one of these cases. Because we need to improve both our current distance learning efforts and prepare for the possible and increasingly likely prospect at some point we'll have to shift all students to fully learning remote. This director and his or her team would focus on coordinating and improving the ways in which we provide instruction, including but not limited to technical concerns such as multiple platforms, and supporting students organizing their work days. And by supporting the staff by eliminating the duplication of efforts, such as having a master recording of each lesson or a demonstration such as labs for chemistry 1 or biology 1 or digital graphics, whatever, leaving the individual teachers available for class discussions and answering questions. Second, supplying the social component students are missing and crave by using the talents and resources of our counseling staff and our athletic staff, our arts and multimedia and communications educators, which assuring that all students are engaged, including our ELL and special needs and Quest students and low-income students are appropriately supported. Working with local employers to assist employees in assessing COVID-19 related family medical leave benefits. Encourage them to look at how they might restructure their workday to facilitate their employees who are working from home while supporting their students engaged in remote learning, and develop ways in which they might become boosters and further our educational and family support efforts, such as recording each of the Photoshop lessons for digital graphics, donating gift cards to those students who are not making it to class because they haven't they've taken jobs to ease the financial burden of their families. Once again, let me say that the teams created to respond to this crisis have done yeoman's work. I mean, fantastic work. And designated a director of remote learning will allow us to refine all the work they've done so far and codify it, to be quite frank, and for the future. That's it.
Thank you, Director Stewart. Any other board comments? Okay. I'll indulge me then while I say one brief thing. I want to thank every other member of the board. I thought we dealt this with the Juanita High School mascot was a difficult issue, and I'm really proud of the way that we, as a board, worked through it in conjunction with Dr. Holman. I know where everyone stood on it. It was pretty clear from the initial meeting, but rather than making a snap decision that was contrary to our policies and procedures, we worked through it, and I think the result is better for that, and that we have a thoughtful we have a very well thought out reason and process for how we went about our decision. And we now have a better policy in place for dealing with this should it arise again in the future. So thank you, everyone. I'm very proud of our work on this. Director Carlson?
No, I just wanted to give you an audience.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
I know it can be hard speaking to a bunch of black boxes.
Yeah, all right, thank you. I appreciate it. So then that concludes, I'm sorry, our upcoming board meeting. So following the meeting tonight, the board has more work to do. We have a study session that follows this meeting. That will also be available for viewing both live and, do I have that right, Dr. Holman? It will be broadcast live and will be available online to view later. The topics for the study session tonight are the Facility Advisories Committee's report and a discussion of school resource officers, and particularly the task force report by the City of Kirkland. And then, let's see here, upcoming meetings on July 27th is our next meeting. There will be a 5 p.m. Board meeting followed by a study session when that concludes. At this point, it is not known if the August meetings will be held remotely or in person. Updates will be provided on the district's website, but those meetings are scheduled for August 10 and August 24th. And Dr. Holm, I have that correct. Under the current guidelines, they would have to be remote. It would be if those changed that we could do in person.
Correct. The current rules have been extended through August 1st.
Okay. That is the end of our agenda tonight. I will now entertain a motion to adjourn the July 13 board meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Oh, there we go.
Okay. I believe Director Bleasner seconded. It has been moved by Director Carlson and seconded by Director Bleasner that we adjourn. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Hearing none, the motion carries and this meeting is adjourned. We have, board members, we have a different Teams link to access the study session.
Right. See you.
Okay, see you all. Before everyone drops off, let's start the study session at, if everyone's okay, a 10-minute break. I have 8:03 right now, so 8:13.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Different link.